Chapter 1945. Everything was carried out in an orderly and tight manner. In order to buy as much time as possible, Yi Zichen overloaded the divine time artifact and increased the flow of time to over 100,000 times. However, in some places the flow of time might not be stable, and there would be time turbulence. But given the current situation, there was no time to worry about that. Divine cannons were pushed out one by one, and the pill refiners under old Lord Taishao's command worked day and night to stock up on pills. At that moment, in the past, anyone would have gasped in amazement at the amount of resources the new era possessed. Zhuo Mo, who'd always worked in logistics, had access to the most resources. When the pill refiners and workshops pushed their finished products and pills in front of her, she couldn't help but gape in astonishment. There were too many. Or rather, it was too spectacular. Even in the capital of the 9 divine mountains, divine-grade spirit recovery pills would fetch an astronomical price. Now, there were millions of them in front of her. There were also mountains of medicinal pills for external application and internal use to heal injuries. Divine cannons. From the outside, even a normal cannon would give off an oppressive aura. Now, however, there was an endless pile of them. Based on her calculations, there were more than 30,000 divine cannons. Whether it was pills or divine cannons, they far surpassed Yi Zichen's requirements. When Yi Zichen listed out those numbers, Zhuo Mo had hesitated. She wondered if this counted as an outrage, and if it was too much of a burden for the pill refiners and craftsmen. She never would have guessed. She inexplicably recalled her father's words. "Little Mo, I gave you the White Treasure Pagoda because you'll definitely become a successful merchant in the future. You're sensitive to numbers and sensitive to changes in the market. But the position of family head, I really need to think about it, because you might be a successful merchant, but you're not suited to be a leader." At the time, Zhuo Mo didn't understand what her father meant. But now, she finally understood it all. Take this mission for example. If she were in Yi Zichen's shoes, she absolutely wouldn't have listed out such impossible numbers. She'd underestimated their potential. She'd been too naive. Zhuo Mo sighed silently, then stared at the accounts for a long time. Yi Zichen's orders had already been completed, but she couldn't tell him excitedly. Even now, she could not forget it. Yi Zichen's silent gaze. Against the entire world. These preparations seemed to be a lot, but if they were to go against the entire world, perhaps inform the masters of the workshop and the alchemy department to work harder. These finished products are far from enough. Still not enough? The people in the logistics department were dumbfounded after hearing this. These pills and god-powered cannons, even when the gods, demons, and demons were at their peak, would not amount to even a tenth of what they had here. But Zhuo Mo said it wasn't enough. Just the 30,000 god-powered cannons alone could destroy half of the celestial race's territory. If I say it's not enough, then it's not enough. Why are you talking so much? Zhuo Mo snorted, then rephrased Yi Zichen's words. Is it a lot? If it's going against the entire world, do you still think it's a big deal? 3 days passed in the outside world. The Yao and God race's elite troops all arrived at the 10th Divine Mountain. Anyone who could come here was an elite amongst elite. Even the weakest among them was a celestial being. But now, the Yao and gods didn't see any diviners at all. They were all supremes. If they lost this battle, the Sky Supremes of the God and Yao clans would become the strongest experts here. Yi Zi, it's about time. Emperor Hades whispered into Yi Zichen's ear. He'd been by Yi Zichen's side this entire time, even though Yale had captured Su Yan and taken her to the Outlands. But he knew. Yi Zichen was even more worried. At that moment, Yi Zichen's lovers, era experts, and even his mother were all in dire straits. Their fates were unknown. Yi Zichen was more anxious than anyone else. Anxious. But that didn't mean he was reckless. On the contrary, Yi Zichen didn't recklessly slaughter his way into the Outlands. That made Su Yan feel even more at ease. He had to stay calm at a time like this. This time, he had to fight to the end. Either Yale died, or the end of the era. The Yao and God Race's elite troops are all here? Yi Zichen smoked a cigarette and looked out at the red sunset. They're all here. Even Su Yun didn't understand what Yi Zichen meant. Yi Zichen said nothing else, and Su Yun didn't know what to say. Right, why didn't you notify the demons? After a while, Su Yun spoke up again. Although there's a rift between us and the demons, we're fighting foreign enemies. We can't underestimate the demons' strength. Why didn't you notify them? Yi Zichen shrugged helplessly. There's no way the demons wouldn't have received the notice. If they don't come, what can we do? That. Emperor Hades sighed. 1 week. That was the longest Yi Zichen could wait. During that time, all the Yao and God Race experts would be on their way. But the demons? They didn't even see any ambitious cultivators. Disaster was imminent. But the demon race turned a blind eye to this, which inevitably made people feel a chill in their hearts. Who said we weren't coming? At that very moment, a low voice suddenly sounded out beside Yi Zichen and Su Yun. When they turned around, they saw a black-robed young man with a smile on his face. He waved his hand at them. It took some time to organize the troops. You should know that the demons' internal affairs are complicated. There are a few stubborn old fogies who refuse to be disciplined. Fighting them with wits and courage is no easy task. Boom! Boom! Smoke filled the air. Not far ahead, there was a dark mass of the Devil Race army, surrounded by dense devil chi. They were led by several commanders to rush over. Everyone who came is an elite. Based on your requirements, they're all diviners and above. The youth smiled and reached out to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen didn't know why, but he understood what he wanted. He took out a cigarette and handed it to him. The youth's fingertips conjured a ball of flame and he lit it. Yi Zichen recognized this youth. Jackdaw. They'd met once before. Why did the old demon emperor? He left. There was no hint of sorrow in the youth's eyes. He got his revenge. His injuries were too severe, and he'd been trapped for so long. He was extremely depressed. Now that his obsession was gone, he left without any regret. Now I'm the Demon Emperor. It seems I'll have to call you Demon Emperor Jackdaw. No. Chapter 1946. Cain. I'm sure most people in the modern realm are familiar with this name. A birdman with wings. Su Yun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he heard Cain's words. He'd once been obsessed with that game as well. He'd used the hero Cain before. Su Yun subconsciously looked towards Yi Zichen and noticed that Yi Zichen's expression, no. There's a difference. Yi Zichen looked more like he was shocked. His shock was, it's you. Yi Zichen suddenly pointed at the Demon Emperor. One had to know that pointing a finger at someone was actually a very impolite behavior, let alone someone of their status. Pointing at the Demon Emperor, Yi Zichen no longer cared about what the Demon Emperor would think. He was so shocked that he lost the ability to speak. It seems like Star Lord Yi has remembered. The Demon Emperor smiled nonchalantly. The Demon Emperor's lips curled up as he said, I have to thank Star Lord Yi for giving me this name. The old Demon Emperor likes it very much, and so does this Emperor. It really is him. Memory retrace, Yi Zichen had just arrived in the Immortal region not long ago, and he'd met a young man who claimed to be the future Demon Emperor. They hadn't had much contact. Gu Zichen had told him that he'd met the young man and given him the name Cain. In the future, perhaps they would come into contact. At the time, Yi Zichen hadn't paid much attention to it. Due to Gu Li's existence, he'd focused all his attention on Gu Li. But now Cain had said his name. He remembered everything. The Cain in front of him was the youth who had spoken arrogantly in front of his face, and he really did it. Congratulations, you've fulfilled your dream. Yi Zichen cupped his hands. Haha, it's just the arrogance of the young. Demon Emperor Cain waved his hand with a smile. Demon Emperor Qin laughed and waved his hand. Back when I was exiled, I was extremely dissatisfied with the demon race. I wanted to reform the demon race, and becoming the demon emperor became my obsession. However, as I grew older, my obsession lessened. I even thought about giving up halfway through. But you still succeeded. I guess it was luck. Or perhaps it was thanks to the name Star-Lord Yi gave me. Demon Emperor Kane's eyes were filled with gratitude. I didn't expect Star-Lord Yi to have such an understanding of our demon race. You actually know that in ancient times, Qin was a demon king. When you gave me this name, I despised it. I didn't expect. He laughed dryly. What else could Yi Zichen say at that moment? The person who'd given Kane his name wasn't him at all. Rather, it was Gu Zichen from a parallel plane. As for the ancient literature of the demon race, he was even more clueless. It was just that Kane now thought of Gu Zichen as himself. Explain? There was nothing much to explain. It was better to just treat it as a beautiful misunderstanding. Yi Zichen wasn't worried about being exposed. Gu Zichen had gone to the universe's secret realm, and by the time he returned, he'd already gone to the Outlands. Victory, Gu Zichen returned to his own realm. Lost, the era was destroyed and the Milky Way collapsed. This misunderstanding could only be buried in the abyss. I dabbled a little. Kane laughed weakly, but didn't pay much attention to Yi Zichen's tone. He was truly grateful to Yi Zichen. I am grateful that he gave me a name back then. Although this name didn't actually help him become the Demon Emperor, back then, no one could understand why he'd been banished from the demon race. When he was young, he'd boasted about things that made people laugh. Yi Zichen didn't laugh at him. Instead, he used the ancient language of the demon race to affirm his dreams. This kindness was worth remembering for the rest of his life. Su Yun watched on in bewilderment. He had no idea what the two of them were talking about. However, the Demon Emperor seemed very happy. It was best not to ruin the atmosphere. Su Yun chose to shut up. Demon Emperor Kane rubbed his nose. Star-Lord Yi, when are we leaving? Are you ready? Asked Yi Zichen. On this trip to the God Realm, I might even lose my life. What's there to be afraid of? Kane said heroically. He pointed at the hundreds of millions of demons before them. Since I've brought them here, there's no need to be afraid. The warriors under this Emperor's command are the same. All right. With that, the Time Divine artifact suddenly opened. Countless Yao and God race experts charged out like a rain of swords, soaring into the sky. Vast and mighty. Everyone standing there was brimming with battle spirit. Not a single one of them showed any signs of fear. The 4 auxiliary stars landed behind Yi Zichen, and the elemental fairies floated around him. The other divine race and demon race experts were led by numerous imperial lords. Zwarimo, give the demon emperor some pills. Emperor! Here! Several spatial rings were delivered to the demon emperor, including the emperor's seal pills. The demon emperor instinctively looked inside. He recognized all the other pills, but when he saw so many, especially the divine-grade spirit-recovering pills, he couldn't help but be flabbergasted. However, that one was a bit pink. That's the Emperor's Seal pill. As the name implies, anyone who consumes it can become an emperor. As for whether they can become an emperor or an imperial lord, that depends on their potential. Kane was dumbfounded. There was actually such a pill in the world? You're in charge of distributing these pills. Give them to whoever you think is suitable. However, I have to warn you in advance. After taking them, their cultivation won't increase at all. In fact, they might even fall. This is a side effect of the pill. You have to tell your subordinates in advance. It was only then that Kane noticed. The divine race and the demon race had many Thearcranked and above expert. The number of god generals was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. Among them, diviners, on the other hand, were relatively rare. Most of them were rulers or divine generals. All right, I understand. As he spoke, Kane was already walking towards the demon clan's army. Judging from the uproar, the demons were clearly stunned by the pills. It had to be said. The devil race had some courage that the human race and the Yao race did not have. Before long, countless demon soldiers were willing to take the pills. The demon's breakthrough flashed without end. After watching for a while, Yi Zichen retracted his gaze. He stared at the Yao and God armies. When they sensed the Emperor Star's gaze, they straightened their backs and waited for Yi Zichen to say something that would boost their morale. Unfortunately, I have nothing to say. His silence caused the gods and Yao's morale to plummet. Zuemo tugged on Yi Zichen's arm, indicating he shouldn't be so gloomy. If even their leader was like this, it was easy to imagine the impact on their subordinate. She didn't want to. She never would have guessed. It's just a few words. Let's do it. Chapter 1947. Whether it was the victor or the loser of a war, the result was destruction and chaos. As long as there was war, there would be misery and suffering. This had nothing to do with the strength of the two sides. It was an inevitable situation. The Outer Realm Protoss, the newly appointed God Emperor Yale, plunged the entire Milky Way into the flames of war. No matter which plane it was, whether they were strong or weak, whether they were close or distant from the Outer Realm Protoss, destroy, destroy, destroy. The wails of those who had lost their homes seemed to become the most beautiful melody in his heart. Under his command and orders, even if the Outer Realm Protoss hated war, they had to raise their weapons and wave the butcher's knife at those innocent people. No one could do anything about it. If they did not kill, Yale would kill them. In Yale's eyes, there was no such thing as mercy. Perhaps his heart had long been filled with one word: destruction. He was fully deserving of the title of destruction. Ever since he was the God King, he had carried out this title. All he thought about was destruction. But at that time, there was the God Emperor above him. Now, the God Emperor had fallen. Yale became the new God Emperor. No one could stop him from carrying out his heart of destruction. Countless planes, the once brilliant Milky Way galaxy, had long since been shattered by Yale. The people of the various planes had thought of joining forces. Facing Yale and the Outer Realm Protoss alone, they had no way to resist. Little did they know, their joining forces was still akin to striking a rock with an egg. The final result could only be destruction. Whether it was the elderly, women or children, all of them would be obliterated. Or become slaves. Become the Outer Realm Protoss, become Yale's tool of war. Some of them were very unyielding. They would rather die than become Yale's dog. But some of them submitted. Inside the Outer Realm Protoss, gods could be seen escorting slaves from other planes to the slave station to be branded as slaves. After that, these slaves would have their own duties. They would go to whatever department they knew how to do. The Outer Realm Protoss established alchemy, talismans, spirit arrays, a series of departments for them to choose from. However, these slaves wouldn't enjoy any special treatment after entering. All they had to do was to work endlessly. If they died, they would be thrown away. If not, they would continue to work. It was even simpler for those warriors. They would be branded as slaves in their sea of consciousness and be controlled by the Outer Realm Protoss. They would be the meat shields at the front lines of the war. If he had any other thoughts, the gods of the god race would kill him without hesitation. As for the children, mining, picking herbs, chop down trees, it was no different from the slavery system in the Middle Ages. These slaves could only struggle to survive. The god race was squeezing their last bit of value out of them. He would abandon them without hesitation. There was also no need to worry about not having enough slaves. As long as the war did not stop, the slaves would be continuously transported to the Outer Realm god race. While the god race was busy transporting the slaves, 100-man squad was shuttling through the god race's outer domain void. Are you done? Yi Zichen narrowed his eyes and gazed at the fiery planet in front of him. He arched his brows. The last time I came here, the Outer Realm gods didn't have such a color. Back then, it looked more like a gloomy and lifeless planet from the outside. From the looks of it, the war with the Outerium god race. The impact on them was not small either. Emperor Star, we just took a look around. The minister of the left licked his lips, then pointed at the Outer Realm god race. The Outer Realm god race's troops are stronger than we imagined. Is that so? How much more? At least 60%. Emperor Hades made a gesture of 6. It's mainly because they have too many slaves, and their cultivations aren't low. We can sense their auras even from the outside. Yi Zichen nodded slightly and committed this information to memory. 60%. In truth, that was within his acceptable range. However, he didn't go in person. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that the 4 auxiliary stars wouldn't let him. Without going in person, he naturally had no idea how strong the slaves Emperor Hades and the others were talking about were. However, from this, it was clear that Yale had destroyed far too many planes during this period. The Outer Realm god race's reputation in the Milky Way galaxy was absolutely tarnished. There was no way Yale could destroy the entire Milky Way galaxy so quickly. There had to be other planes out there. Yi Zichen was certain that quite a few were waiting for an opportunity. They were waiting for one of them to attack Yale first and profit from it. Perhaps they would submit to the Outer Realm god race, or perhaps they would wage war against them. When that happened, in truth, 60% of the slaves was negligible. If the entire Milky Way went to war, how big of a wave could 60% of the slaves cause? Hey, why isn't a Hogue here? At that moment, Yi Zichen noticed that the minister of the right hadn't returned with the group. His heart ached. The current Outer Realm god race wasn't like before. They hadn't shed all pretense of cordiality. Back then, when the Outer Realm god race saw Ji Yuan, they didn't do anything. But now. But if they saw one, they'd kill one. A Hogue leaving the group at a time like this wasn't good news. Furthermore, given his personality, he was a troublemaker. Oh him? He stayed behind on purpose. Yin Shang chuckled. Su Lu and the others nodded. It seemed they all agreed with a Hogue's decision. The Outer Realm god race has a lot of troops, and they even have a protective barrier around them. If we attack by force, it'll be difficult for us to break through. That's why a Hogue is trying to lure them away. Lure them away? Just him? Asked Yi Zichen. They have a few more imperial emperors. That's not enough. Yi Zichen shook his head. How could Yale's barrier be broken so easily? Go Yuzhan wants to lure them away. First, he needs to make the Outer Realm god race feel threatened, then notifies Wemo and give him 2,000 divine-powered cannons. 20,000 divine-grade spirit recovery pills. Understood. Right, tell him to use them sparingly. Our foundations aren't as deep as the Outer Realm god races. All right. Yin Shang gave his orders. Yi Zichen remained in the sky, staring at the Outer Realm god race. He really hadn't expected. Yale had set up a barrier around the Outer Realm god race's territory. He'd thought he'd be able to fight his way into their territory, but it seemed the future would be a tug-of-war. But he'd set up a barrier. This also meant that he wasn't as confident as he sounded. Pass on my orders. Suddenly, Yi Zichen raised his hands, and someone rushed to his side. Chapter 1948. Boss, give me 3,000 God's Might cannons. When he saw the cannons Zuemo had sent, as well as the emperors accompanying them, the Ahogue Go Yuzhan danced with joy. He absolutely couldn't sit still. On his way here, he'd been thinking of rushing to the outside god race and fighting with the gods. However, when he saw the barrier, he was somewhat disappointed. No, he wasn't stupid. Comparatively speaking, he'd been educated in the modern realm, so he knew better than anyone what this barrier meant. A tug-of-war. It was impossible to directly attack the Outerium god race's hinterland and attack the Long Dragon. This sort of tug-of-war was the most boring. He doubted Yi Zichen would send him as a vanguard in the early stages of the war. Might as well. He suggested feinting an attack to attract the outside god race's firepower. Then, Yi Zichen would lead a full-on assault. This seemed like the right thing to do, but in truth, he just wanted to have some fun. To his surprise, Yin Shang and the others agreed. That wasn't all. Zuomo even gave him the God Might Cannon. This was too good. With the God Might Cannon and so many emperors on his side, he'd absolutely have fun. Don't get too excited. At that moment, someone knocked Go Yuzhan on the head. The Minister of the Right. Plus, the Upheaval Alliance was second only to the Emperor's star. Even the Divine Mountain Emperors had to give him face. His current position was like that of a general in the Imperial Palace. Who dared knock his head? He frowned and turned around. Before Go Yuzhan could say anything to scare him, the ahog on his head drooped. Why are you here too? Can't I? If I didn't come, you'd die. Only two people could strike fear into Go Yuzhan's heart. One was Su Luer, another of the four great auxiliary stars. She was strong, but her temper wasn't good either. She froze people at the slightest disagreement. Earlier, Go Yuzhan had been frozen by her. Yin Shang had to plead on his behalf to release him. But now, Su Luer was with the Yao army. Furthermore, that cute, clear voice just now couldn't have come from the queen-like Su Luer. Why are you looking at me like that? Do you think I'm pretty? Her clear voice rang out once more. Go Yuzhan chuckled. Beautiful. The one standing in front of Go Yuzhan was Liuli. She was little Lori, who had taken the form of a human. After leaving the valley with Yi Zichen for so long, she'd once been as spotless as a sheet of white paper, but now she'd been tainted by the world's vulgarity. Fortunately, the people in the league doted on her, so she was still a little childish. And Goyu was afraid of her. It was because she was his sweetheart. Seeing Go Yuzhan confess so openly, Liuli blushed. An ambiguous atmosphere lingered between them. The Imperial Realm Masters at the side couldn't help but turn their heads away. The sour smell of love, it was too unbearable. You're the only one who knows how to talk. Liuli patted Go Yuzhan's hand lightly. Hee, I can't help myself. Go Yuzhan scratched his head, and then his expression darkened as he stared at him. Don't tell me you're coming with me. Attracting the enemy's firepower was definitely not a good job. Magatama volunteered because he wanted to play, and he was confident that he could survive. But Liuli was different. Liuli was his favorite. He didn't want Liuli to be in any danger. Yeah, what's the problem? Liuli glared at him. I begged Yigij for a long time before he agreed to let me come, and told you to protect me. Nonsense. Go Yuzhan frowned, then grabbed Liuli's arm. Come back with me. You definitely can't mess around with me. It's too dangerous. All right, don't you understand why I'm here? It wasn't you who begged, boss. If Yigij didn't want me to come, then do you think there's any point in me begging him? The ahog on Go Yuzhan's head shook several times under Liuli's gaze. Not long later, you're saying, Yigij wanted me to come from the very beginning, said Liuli. How could that be? Go Yuzhan didn't understand. He knew very well how much Yi Zichen valued Liuli. Yi Zichen practically treated her like his own little sister. There's no way he didn't know just how dangerous is the vanguard. How could he have sent Liuli over from the very beginning? There's only one possibility. Yigij knows you too well, said Liuli, patting Go Yuzhan on the shoulder. He knows full well what you're up to. But instead of sending you back, he gave you 3,000 divine-powered cannons. Why? He doesn't want me to mess around. He really does want me to attract the attention of the god race, said Go Yuzhan. That's right. Liuli snapped her fingers and giggled. Big brother Yin Shang and the others know you too well. They know you like to mess around. If you're happy, you won't even think about the consequences. They were afraid you'd do that, so they sent me. They trust you a lot, laughed Liuli. They trust that you can protect me. Don't you think so? I can. Go Yuzhan pounded his chest loudly. I trust you, said Liuli with a sweet smile. Liu Li smiled sweetly. At this moment, Go Yuzhan finally looked at the god-powered cannons and the Thear-cranked experts seriously. This was an arduous task. It seemed he couldn't just let himself do whatever he wanted. In this attack against the god race, he had to do everything a commander was supposed to do. He had to attract enough enemy firepower to give Yi Zichen and the others a chance. At the same time, he had to ensure the safety of his subordinate. Most importantly, he had to ensure Liu Li's safety. Gradually, Go Yuzhan's gaze became focused. His gaze became unusually sharp. Liu Li stared at him in a daze, a warm smile on her face. He's pretty handsome when he's serious, Liu Li thought to herself. 3,000 divine-powered cannons. How many divine-grade spirit-recovering pills did boss give me? 30,000. And 100,000 immortal-grade pills. That's enough. It was obvious Go Yuzhan had already made up his mind. He waved at the cannoneers behind him. The experts pushed the divine-powered cannons and followed behind Go Yuzhan. They circled around until they were directly in front of Yi Zichen and the others. At the same time, a streak of flame shot out of Go Yuzhan's hand, leaving 10 red dots outside the god race's barrier. Can you see those dots? The experts nodded. In a bit, aim the cannons at those spots. If anyone dares miss, hee. I have a way to make you suffer. When they saw Go Yuzhan smile, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. He thought to himself, I can't miss. Heh, scared now? Go Yuzhan laughed in satisfaction, then raised his hand high into the air. Chapter 1949. Dazzling fiery light dyed the sky a fiery red. The deafening roar even trembled the void and was transmitted to the front of the Alliance army camped outside the territory. A Hogue has made his move. Yin Shang stood in front of the camp and muttered. His fists were clenched so tightly his palms were sweaty. No matter when, the Minister of the Left and Minister of the Right were on the best of terms. Yin Shang and Go Yuzhan were already on good terms after receiving the star's inheritance, but now they were even closer. He knew Go Yuzhan very well. You could say that he understood him the best in the entire Milky Way galaxy. Sending Liu Li over was actually mostly his idea. It was precisely because he understood Go Yuzhan too well that he knew he wanted to mess things up. He didn't want Go Yuzhan to consider the consequences. He had to send Lori to his side. That way, when he made a decision, he could consider many aspects. I don't know if he understands what I'm saying. Yin Shang sighed. Emperor Hades, Su Yun, patted him on the shoulder. He'll understand. Although he's a bit rash, with Lori here, he'll definitely take this more seriously than anyone else. I hope so. Yin Shang knew that Emperor Hades was just trying to comfort him, so he didn't pursue the matter. With that, he walked up to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen watched as the cannons rained down from the sky. The divine-powered cannons were powerful, and they made quite a bit of noise. Even though they were separated by an entire extraterritorial celestial race, they could still clearly hear the explosions from the other side. Master of the Stars, Go Yuzhan has already made his move. I know, nodded Yi Zichen. Let's not just sit around. Have the divine-powered cannons get ready and send out a few experts proficient in the Tao of space to investigate the situation. So long as we lose 30% of our men, open fire. Understood. Before long, the divine-powered cannons were all fired. They covered an area of 100 square kilometers. The cannons' muzzles were pointed straight at the outer realm. The cannoneers' expressions were solemn. All they needed was a single order, and the cannons would land unhesitatingly on the outer realm's barrier. That's right, just like that. Fire as hard as you can. How majestic would 3,000 god-powered cannons be? Just like that, when Zhuo Mo led a group of people to save the Yao race, a few hundred divine-powered cannons had completely routed the overgods and gods of the foreign god race. 3,000. Its power had increased by more than 10 times. Scarlet cannonballs rained down like blazing comets, landing unerringly on the spot that Go Yuzhan had marked earlier. Divine Emperor Yale. From the attack of the god-powered cannon, one could deduce that the enchantment of the extraterritorial celestial race was set up by Yale. Each shot was powerful enough to kill a great emperor, but they didn't even cause a ripple on the barrier. Interesting. The corners of Go Yuzhan's mouth twitched, while Liuli watched the scene unfold from the side. She was very worried. Being naive did not mean that she was still a newbie who had just left the valley. She was very clear about the power of the god-powered cannon. She was also very clear about what it meant to fire the cannon. Just take the 3,000 god-powered cannons for example. That was an entire Divine Mountain's annual tax revenue, and that was more than that. It had already been 3 rounds of volleys, but not only had the barrier not been damaged, not even a crack had appeared. Zhuomo's divine-grade spiritual recovery pills were limited. If this went on, this isn't a solution, Liuli couldn't help but say. What's there to be afraid of? Don't panic, the main show is yet to come. Commander-in-Chief Go Yuzhan's eyes were filled with confidence as he fired volley after volley of cannons, as if they were free of charge. When the 10th volley landed, crack. It was a very faint sound, almost undetectable amidst the roar of the cannon fire. But Go Yuzhan heard it. Stop! He raised his arm, and the god-powered cannon regiment immediately ceased fire. Under Liuli's uneasy gaze, Go Yuzhan swaggered up to the enchantment. Through the enchantment, he could already see that the extraterritorial celestial race had begun to gather their forces. However, perhaps because the god-powered cannons were too little of a threat to them, they weren't very frantic, and there weren't many of them. They were all camped within the enchantment, with no intention of facing the enemy. Hee, brothers from the extraterritorial celestial race, how do you do? Not caring if the people inside could hear him, Go Yuzhan laughed and greeted them. You guys sure know how to put on airs. I'm already at your doorstep, and you're still hiding in your turtle shell. Come on out, we're actually very easy to fight. For a long time, the extraterritorial celestial race did not reply. The only thing that could be seen was a slight change in the way they looked at Go Yuzhan. How boring. Your turtle shell is pretty hard, but no matter how hard it is, it will still break. With a smile, Go Yuzhan clasped his hands behind his back and left. Nobody understood what he was doing. Was it purely to mock the true gods of the extraterritorial celestial race? Of course not. Pull out the 2,000 god-powered cannons, and head to the location I mentioned earlier. Go Yuzhan, who had returned to the cannon regiment, commanded. Without any hesitation, the cannon regiment pushed the cannons and left. When Liuli heard this, she couldn't help but frown. What are you doing? Not fighting anymore? Who said I'm not fighting anymore? Go Yuzhan laughed mysteriously as he erased the 9 markings in front of the enchantment. Then, he turned to the 1,000 god-powered cannons and shouted. Fire at this point, don't hold back. Fire as many cannons as you can. Boom, 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 cannon fire pierced through the skies once again. The commander, Go Yuzhan, stood at the forefront of the cannon fire, his eyes fixed on the markings. There was a crack there. The 10 points that he had chosen previously were actually 10 different positions that he had randomly chosen. He had used the same cannon fire to attack these 10 points. It was to find the weakest point of the defense. The principle of an egg. If the force of an egg was evenly distributed, even an adult would not be able to crush it. But if it was just a simple point, even a child would be able to crush it. It was the same for the enchantment. Such a huge turtle shell would definitely not be broken by random cannon fire. But if they kept firing at one point, the pressure on that point would be too great, and cracks would naturally appear. As for why they didn't just randomly, after all, it was the enchantment of a god-emperor. Finding the weakest point would save more resources. The resources in this era were limited. Breaking through the enchantment was not their final goal. Their mission was to destroy the entire extraterritorial celestial race. Yale, the god emperor of destruction, could not be left alive. Little did they know. Yi Zichen and the others stood in front of Goyujan. Everything was just as he'd started. Do you see the 10 points I drew? Chapter 1950. The cannons continued to roar. The god-powered cannon was indeed worthy of its name. As the cannons fired, the entire extraterritorial celestial race was in a state of panic. Sir, let's face the enemy. The extraterritorial celestial race's eyes were filled with anxiety. Ever since Ahog's god-powered cannon fired, the extraterritorial celestial race had started to regroup. A total of 300,000 celestial race soldiers were on standby. In front of these anxious celestial race soldiers, there were more than twice their number. Their gazes were unfocused and they had no fighting spirit. These people were the captives that Yale had brought back from conquering other planes. Ever since they were brought to the extraterritorial celestial race, their futures had been decided. They would become the celestial race's shields. Meet shields. They were death warriors who could not retreat and could only advance. Against the era's god-powered cannon attack, they would not be as panicked as the extraterritorial celestial race. To them, they were still looking forward to the era's attack. Even if they could not save them, at least they could not let the extraterritorial celestial race live in peace. If they could overthrow the extraterritorial celestial race, that would be the best. Of course, they were only thinking about it. Their souls were marked with slave imprints. If they revealed any rebellious thoughts, they would be killed by the person who had imprints on them. How pitiful! The slaves' hearts were filled with bitter tears. They admired the era's courage in attacking the extraterritorial celestial race. But if they continued to struggle, they would only be destroyed. If they had attacked back then, would there have been a different ending? They lowered their heads. The god of the extraterritorial celestial race was still arguing with their commander. Rather than saying it was an argument, it was more like a one-sided request from the god of the extraterritorial celestial race. Sir, I have already investigated. The invaders are from the neighboring era. These people are really daring to challenge the extraterritorial celestial race's authority. I only need you to deploy 100,000 elites to wipe out those ants from the era. The commander that the god of the extraterritorial celestial race spoke of was an old man with white hair. This old man was not a god under any god king, but his reputation in the celestial race was not any lower than the god king's. He was the #1 war god under the dark god king. After the dark god king fell, he resigned from his position and became a free man, killing God Bai Ning. In Bai Ning's life, the number of people who had died in his hands was more than 9-digit. Bai Ning was the main reason why the Dark God King was invincible. For a long time, he had ignored any matters of the god race. For him to appear here, they were coerced. Bai Ning had a daughter named Bai Hua. Bai Ning was not born until Bai Hua was old. His mother died shortly after. In order to mourn his former lover, Bai Ning's daughter was named after his wife. Perhaps it was because the sins of killing were too deep. Bai Hua did not inherit any of Bai Ning's talents, and he was still a lower god even after 100 years. With Bai Ning's status, it was enough for Bai Hua to live a free life. Unfortunately, he was captured by Yale. When Yale ascended to the throne, the first person he captured was Bai Hua. This was so that Bai Ning could come out of seclusion and be of use to him. In Yale's original words, looking at the entire Protoss, the only person who could make him, Yale, treat him seriously was the god of slaughter, old General Bai. He came. For the sake of his daughter, he turned to Yale. However, he, who did not want to kill any more people, had never led his troops out of the god race's territory. He just wanted to stay here, safe and sound. As long as his daughter was safe, that was enough. Who knew? The epic era would attack. As the god race's #1 commander under Yale, he had no qualms about defending against the enemy. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, 300,000 god race elites were organized, and 600,000 captives were escorted to their positions. He still did not attack. He silently watched the Autorium Protoss race attack, even if the artillery fire outside made his eardrums hurt. He still bided his time. He didn't want to kill. He didn't want to be a cruel executioner anymore. Also, he bided his time because of the outsiders, the Epic era. He who had never paid attention to the God race's disputes. By chance, the God Emperor had once heard of the Epic era's Master of the Stars, the Epic era's Supreme Commander, Yi Zichen. The God Emperor never liked to praise others, but that day, he beamed with joy and praised Yi Zichen for over an hour. Since then, Yi Zichen's name was imprinted in Bai Ning's heart. Now that the Epic era was attacking the Outlanders, a ruler praised so highly by the God Emperor would absolutely not act rashly. At the very least, he had a 30% chance of success. After all, a 30% chance was already a very high number. Yale's existence had long since made the Outlanders an existence that couldn't be provoked. Against the Outlanders, even a 50% chance of victory was already an exaggeration. 30%. It was entirely dependent on the God Emperor's praise. The North was under attack. Bai Ning was naturally the first to learn of the spy's investigation. He knew. In truth, there weren't that many people in the area being bombarded. The only thing that Bai Ning was afraid of were the God-powered cannons. If he wanted to, he was confident he wouldn't need 100,000. Just 30,000. No. It might be even fewer, but he could still kill all of them. But he couldn't do that. There was no way the Epic era's Emperor Star wouldn't have any backup plans. If he rashly sent troops and fell into their trap, what would he do? Besides, he knew the South. He could vaguely see the traces of experts passing through. Perhaps this was a ploy to lure the tiger away from the mountain. So long as they left, the South would fall. But their elites weren't here. So what if the Epic era advanced? Wait. He could only wait. He had to wait for Yale's orders. He didn't want to think too much about it. He'd fight however Yale told him to. Your Excellency! Don't move. If they don't attack, we won't move. AI. The deity who'd been urging them to face the enemy waved his hands and left. No one tried to stop him. No one dared. How could anyone who could talk to Bai Ning like that be an ordinary person? In truth, he was one of Yale's main gods. If it weren't for Bai Ning, he'd be Yale's second in command. Bai Ning stood as still as a mountain. Until Yale sent word, he absolutely wouldn't move. In truth, this was the best-case scenario. Even if he didn't move, Go Yuzhan and Yi Zichen wouldn't. Until. Your Excellency Bai, it's bad. The spy ran over frantically. Bai Ning frowned and looked up into the sky. It hadn't broken. Although the barrier was cracked, it could still hold for at least half a day. Could it be? Is it Bai Yan? Yes, not long ago, General Bai Yan led the border guards through the barrier. That pig brain. When the barrier wasn't broken, it was absolutely stable, but once it was, there would be holes. Chapter 1951. Unable to accomplish anything, but only capable of ruining things. From the very beginning, when Yale arranged for Bai Yan to come here, Bai Ning had rejected it in his heart. They did not belong to the same era. There was no interaction at all. Bai Ning didn't quite understand Bai Yan's style of doing things, but from the moment they met, he knew that Bai Yan was an idiot. For a person like this to become a sovereign truly was a blessing from the heavens. Bai Ning was very arrogant. He did not like to be associated with idiots. In the beginning, he had expressed his intention to reject Bai Yan to Yale, but Yale acted as if he didn't understand and didn't think about it at all. Bai Ning understood. It wasn't that Yale didn't understand, but he had to pretend that he didn't. He invited him out of the mountain, but he didn't trust him. Bai Yan happened to be his most loyal dog, so he needed Bai Yan to stay here as a spy. Bai Ning accepted that his daughter was in Yale's hands. He thought that as long as the idiot Bai Yan listened to him, it would be fine. As for commanding the army to fight, he could even be a puppet deputy general. However, Bai Ning did not expect. How could a person be so stupid? At this moment, the Outerium celestial race was completely relying on the barrier that Yale had left behind. The people outside couldn't enter, and the people inside were absolutely safe. Although Ji Yuan's attacks were very fierce, in the end, the enchantment had been arranged by the God Sovereign, and Yale's methods were likely even more brilliant than the old God Sovereign's. Even if it was attacked from the outside, it would be difficult to break through in a short period of time. They had plenty of time to contact the Divine Emperor Yale and ask him to preside over the overall situation, or to come up with countermeasures. At the same time, it would also wear down Ji Yuan's combat readiness and the patience of the soldiers. It was a choice with hundreds of advantages and no disadvantages. It was completely broken by Bai Yan, the idiot. He couldn't take it anymore, so he activated the barrier and wanted to take the initiative to face the enemy. Yet they didn't know that all of this was exactly what Ji Yuan wanted. What he believed to be his battle achievements, perhaps, it might even become an era's contribution. Not only that, opening the barrier would inevitably cause the barrier to become unstable, and the impregnable defense would become extremely fragile if there were any flaws. By Yan's trip, he had tricked the entire Outer Realm God race. In the past, Bai Ning would not have bothered with such an idiot. This kind of brainless guy deserved to die. He didn't deserve to live. Not now. He was the commander of the Outer Realm God race, and he had to protect the Outer Realm God race. Bai Yan was also Yale's spy. He was dead. Bai Ning was not afraid of Yale blaming him, but he was afraid that Yale would vent his anger on his daughter. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and save that idiot. As for the South, let's hope that everything will be all right. He's pretty good at keeping his cool. The commander, Go Yuzhan, sat in the void, resting his chin on his hand. He looked at the Outerium celestial race, who were still holed up in their turtle shells. His steadiness caused Go Yuzhan's expression to darken. This was definitely not good news. It looked as though he had found the weakest point of the enchanted shield. The God-powered cannons were causing the cracks to become bigger and bigger. However, he was very clear in his heart that even if he were to attack all these emperors until their spiritual powers were depleted, they would not be able to destroy this enchanted shield. It was too hard. Moreover, he couldn't let these emperors fight until they ran out of spiritual power. Otherwise, who would carry them when the time came? If 3,000 became 30,000, there might be a possibility. Go Yuzhan couldn't do anything if the Outer Realm celestial race didn't come out. The commander of the Outerium Protoss race is really something. Most people who saw this kind of crack would have anxiously attacked. The fact that he had not made a move meant that everything was still under his control. Go Yuzhan did not like to fight with such a person. He was tired. The pressure was immense. If we really can't do it, we have to retreat. After a long time, Go Yuzhan slapped his head. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to make this decision. With Lu Li around, he really couldn't bring himself to let the 3,000 God-powered cannons fire until their spiritual powers were depleted. That was the kind of decision that would cut off all means of retreat. I have to go back and tell boss that there are capable people in the Outerium Protoss. Just as Go Yuzhan was about to retreat, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. Am I seeing things? They're out. Someone from the Outerium Protoss had actually come out from the enchanted shield. Coming at the right time was not as good as delivering it at the right time. If they had come a few seconds later, Go Yuzhan might have been prepared to retreat. Since they had come out, it meant that his mission had been accomplished. Now, fire at them with all your might. The God-powered cannons charged towards Bai Yan's army. The power of the God-powered cannons was unimaginable. Bai Yan's celestial soldiers were suppressed to the point where they could not take a single step forward. The slaves that he had brought out were also forced to the front to absorb the power of the cannons. Don't be afraid. They are betting everything on this. They won't be able to hold on for long. Bai Ning said that Bai Yan was an idiot. In actual fact, Bai Yan had some brains. It was just that his brain was more simplistic and simplistic. For example, he had guessed that the god-powered cannons would not be able to hold on for long. And he was right. Your Excellency, we can't fight anymore? Go Yuzhan turned around and saw that the other emperors were nodding their heads. He then laughed lightly. Then what are you waiting for? Run. Retract the cannons, retreat, retreat. Ji Yuan and his men hurriedly retracted their cannons. Perhaps it was because they were too flustered, there were a few cannons that they did not have the time to keep. Hence, they were abandoned in the void. Bai Yan laughed out loud. He knew that everything was under his control. Chase after them. Your Excellency Bai Yan, please hold on. Just as Bai Yan was in high spirits, a soldier ran up to him. Your Excellency Bai Ning has ordered you to retreat immediately. Do not chase after them. If not, stay here and wait for your Excellency Bai Ning. Scram! Bai Yan kicked the soldier away and snorted. Killing God Bai Ning is already old. He is no longer the victorious general he once was. He is so indecisive. I really don't know why the God Emperor made him the commander. This time, I will use facts to prove that I, Bai Yan, am the true leader of the celestial tribe. Handsome. This era's battle merits belong to me. Kill them! With a wave of his arm, Bai Yan led his army and chased after them. After a long time, Bai Ning finally caught up from behind. He saw that it was the soldier who was coughing up blood in midair. The soldier repeated Bai Yan's words strenuously, "This idiot?" At this moment, Bai Ning almost roared out. He arranged for someone to treat the soldier's injuries, and he hurriedly led his men forward. Stop right there. You can't run. Bai Yan was already a few hundred meters away from Goyuzhan. He was like a cat playing with a mouse. Bai Yan could have caught up earlier, but he did not. As soon as he finished speaking, Goyuzhan really stopped. If only everyone in the celestial tribe was as silly and adorable as you. Boom. Chapter 1952. This is interesting. In the beginning, Goyuzhan didn't want to do too much. He merely wanted to reduce the pressure on Yi Zichen and company. This was great. They directly sent a general up. Why would the Magatama make such a judgment from head to toe? Bai Yan was a high-grade product. Even the accessories on his arms were probably high-grade divine artifact. The armor was probably at the level of a heavenly god artifact. Moreover, it was a high-grade heavenly god artifact. TSK. Goyuzhan's eyes were burning with envy. After all, he'd begged Su Luer Yinshang and Emperor Hades to give him his best silver rod for a short period of time. Low-grade heavenly god artifact. As for his soft armor and other defensive divine artifacts, Yi Zichen had given them to him. They were all treasures on the divine weapon ranking. Even their rankings were not that high. It wasn't that Yi Zichen didn't treat him well. In truth, Yi Zichen was absolutely generous to him. He even let him choose which divine artifacts to use. Unfortunately, he didn't like any of them. He felt that it was not domineering enough. Goyuzhan felt that Bai Yan's outfit wasn't bad at all. It would suit him very well if he wore it. It was an ambush. This was Bai Yan's first thought. Needless to say, anyone with a brain would know that they had fallen into a trap. They were well aware of the might of the god-powered cannon. It was a weapon of war that made the divine emperor boundary formation buzz and made them tremble in fear. At this time, 2,000 god-powered cannons were pointed at them. Surrendering might be their only option. Stubborn resistance? Stop fooling around. Which one of the Outer Realms gods wasn't loyal to the old god emperor? If they really had the heart to resist stubbornly, they would have fought with Yale and died a long time ago. What was left was, they were all people who did not want to die for various reasons. Surrendering was as common as eating to them. Wasn't it just disarming and surrendering? It was too simple. Sir, we surrender. In less than 3 seconds, someone from the Ouroboros had already thrown down his weapon and walked out with his hands raised high above his head. This scene, even Go Yuzhan was dumbfounded, let alone Bai Yan. What was going on? Do you have to be so soft? Bai Yan's chest heaved up and down, and his face was filled with anger. In just a short while more than 30% of the people chose to disarm and surrender, and when they left, they brought along their slaves who were bound with soul imprint. Come back here or else, otherwise what? In that instant, hundreds of God-powered cannons were pointed at Bai Yan. The chill from the soles of his feet went straight to the top of his head. This cannon. This was something that could take someone's life. Go Yuzhan looked at him mockingly. Annoyed? It was useless. So what if they were angry? They were surrounded, and if they dared to say no, they would definitely eat artillery shells. If 2,000 cannons were to be fired, wouldn't they be blown to smithereens? Nothing to say? I thought you were going to be tough. Just then, Commander, reinforcements have arrived. Bai Yan's eyes lit up instantly when he heard that, and he stretched his neck and shouted. General Bai, I'm here, Before he could say anything, Go Yuzhan had already walked out of the room. At the same time, he also heard, stop. Short and powerful. Without any hesitation. Bai Ning stopped. Hey, reinforcements? That's pretty fast. Go Yuzhan squinted his eyes and smiled. Bai Ning didn't say anything, and his elite troops were behind him. 300 meters. At this moment, Bai Ning was only 300 meters away from Bai Yan. For lords like them, 300 meters was like the blink of an eye, but it felt like a century. General Bai Ning, I'm here. Bai Yan's voice reverberated through the air, and Go Yuzhan shrugged nonchalantly. Is that idiot calling for you? General Bai Ning. I don't know him. Retreat. No one expected that Bai Ning, who had led the army here, would retreat. Bai Yan didn't hear wrongly. Bai Ning was the one who had said that. He didn't come to save him, and that meant that he had been abandoned. How could he not retreat? As soon as he arrived, Bai Ning saw the densely packed cannons pointed at them. At such a close distance, one round of fire would kill more than half of them. After a few rounds, they would all die, let alone save them. Furthermore, the surrounding environment was very strange. Based on Bai Ning's many years of experience, this was the perfect place for an ambush. They couldn't go in. They had to retreat. They had to be decisive. Bai Yan was an idiot. Bai Ning didn't have to clean up after being surrounded by enemies. Even if Yale came out of seclusion, Bai Ning had a clear conscience. Actually, this was the advantage of Bai Ning's experience on the battlefield. He could make the most intuitive and accurate judgment of the situation. There used to be a saying among the outer realm celestials, Bai Ning. If you hit him, he wouldn't even retaliate. But if he retaliates, you'll definitely die. That was his personality, and that was how he led his troop. If he couldn't win, he wouldn't even try to probe. But if he could win, no one would be able to escape from him. This old man must be the commander. He's a smart man indeed. His decision to retreat without hesitation shocked Go Yuzhan, but he was more in awe of him. He was the Minister of the Right, the #1 general of the Star Dynasty. After receiving the Minister of the Right's inheritance, he had an incomparable ability to control battles. This ambush point, this was the best geographical location he had found after investigating the surrounding situation. 2,000 God-powered cannons, whoever came would die. If Bai Ning had advanced another 200 meters, Go Yuzhan would definitely have died here as well. What god of slaughter? Entering this place was all bullshit. He couldn't take the initiative to face the enemy. Moving the god-powered cannons was troublesome, and this was the best ambush point. If he retreated, Bai Yan and the others would no longer be restricted. If he didn't, firing the god-powered cannons would only be a waste of shells. It would also expose his side's true strength. It was a bit of a pity that Bai Ning had escaped. If he'd been captured by this commander, the outer realm celestial race would definitely be a pile of loose sand. When that happened, they could fight however they wanted. At most, Yale might be a problem, but Goyujan didn't need to worry about him. Yale. Naturally, Yi Zichen would deal with him. But that wasn't bad. Bai Ning had escaped, so be it. Capturing Bai Yan had already exceeded his expectations. Goyujan licked his lips, then walked up to 100 meters in front of Bai Yan. To everyone's surprise, 90% of the outer realm celestial race had already surrendered. These were the decisions they'd made after Bai Ning retreated. How pitiful! Your subordinates have already surrendered, and your comrades are watching you die. Why, you still don't want to surrender. Do you want to be a tough nut to crack? I wonder how many rounds you can take? Chapter 1953. Everyone was shocked by Goyujan's words. All sorts of strange gazes swept across Goyujan's body. Especially the emperors, they all muttered in their hearts. Our general actually has this sort of hobby. Bai Yan's face was also completely red. This is 2F** king embarrassing. It's fine being a captive, but I even met a pervert. I didn't expect this general to have such soft skin. I didn't expect him to like a burly man like me. A chrysanthemum that's tens of thousands of years old. Am I going to lose it? Bai Yan's heart trembled. He licked his lips and looked at Goyujan with a hint of fear. Era Yuan's people are too cruel. Killing people. He's not just killing people, he's trampling on their dignity. Furthermore, he was using such a method of harming the enemy while harming himself. Too cruel. If Bai Yan knew how cruel this person is, he wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Here? Take it off now? Isn't that bullshit? Hurry up, Laozi is in a hurry. Goyujan frowned, but his eyes were filled with excitement. Especially when he licked his lips, greed surfaced in his eyes as he looked at Bai Yan. In an instant, the emperors of the Shunwei Cannon Corps all retreated several tens of meters. His gaze was too terrifying. The moment they saw that gaze, their chrysanthemums all tensed up. Little Lori's face was red, and her fair and tender fingers were trembling violently. No wonder, he's always hanging out with that damn fatty Yin Shang. The two of them are actually gay friends. I'm going to tell big sister Su Zhu. Lori whimpered and ran away. Goyujan, who was waiting to take off Bai Yan's equipment, was completely confused. Only then did he realize the ambiguity in his words. Lori, wait for me, you misunderstood. Goyujan didn't forget to warn the cannoneers as he chased after Lori. Send a signal to boss and tell them to act. Also, I have to see him naked before I return. The cannoneers felt a chill down their spines, while Bai Yan's vision darkened in the end. I still can't escape my fate of being killed. Bang! He fainted. 3 dazzling sparks exploded in the sky, appearing in front of Yi Zichen and the others. Yin Shang, who had been staring at the signal, raised his eyebrows when he saw it. The Ahog is done. Yi Zichen nodded, and Yin Shang waved his hand. Fire! Boom, boom, boom! The roar of cannon fire was deafening. When Yi Zichen's cannons started firing, it was obvious that the commotion was several times greater than Goyujan's. Tens of thousands of god-powered cannons fired in unison. The enchantment of the god race began to tremble violently. It was obvious that even though the God Emperor's enchantment was set up by the God Emperor, it was still unable to withstand the bombardment of the god-powered cannons. Of course, it was also possible that Bai Yan, that idiot, loosened the barrier after he opened it, causing the defense to not be as impenetrable as before. He's here. He's here again. The god race was in chaos. Goyujan's cannons had already thrown them into a state of panic. However, the impact of 3,000 god-powered cannons on the Outerium celestial race wasn't that great. The gods of the Outerium god race. He could also do what he was supposed to do step by step. But now, tens of thousands of god-powered cannons fired in unison. The tremors they felt from the enchantment were all too real. The people of the god race were all looking outside in fear. They were afraid that the enchantment would shatter and they'd be caught in the crossfire. General Bai. Where the hell did General Bai go? The commanders of the God Race army roared impatiently. The current situation had thrown them into disarray. The only thing they could think of was to wait for Bai Ning to take charge. As soon as the cannons started firing, the commanders of the God Race gathered together. Nearly 60% of the God Race's forces were gathered in the southern part of the God Race's territory. This was the firing point. If the enchantment broke, this would be the first battlefield. So it wasn't a problem for the commanders to gather here. Unfortunately, Bai Ning wasn't in the God Race right now. Even if they gathered together, they could do nothing but worry. If the commander isn't in the army, what kind of commander is he? Can someone tell me how to handle this? I know, right? Why don't we just fight our way out? Waiting here is no different from sitting around waiting for death. Let's take the initiative and attack. That might be better. That's right. It's not like we haven't interacted with Ji Yuan before. He isn't that strong. This idea instantly gained the approval of many commanders. Maybe it was because they had won so many battles that they had an indescribable confidence in any battle. This was morale. If they won, they would naturally have high morale. If they lost, they would be afraid. Ever since Yale took over, the God Race had never tasted defeat. Their morale was at its peak. Even if Ji Yuan's God-powered cannon was powerful, they weren't afraid. I think we should wait for General Bai to return. Just as the commanders were discussing how to deal with Ji Yuan, someone poured cold water on them. He had good intentions. Confidence was good. Arrogance was. But the commanders above them wouldn't listen to him. Wait for him. I don't know where he is now. Do you know how long it will take for him to return? Moreover, the battle outside is so fierce. If we don't go out, it will hurt our morale. What if they attack while we wait? The commander glared at the commander, causing the other commander to stop talking. A puny Ji Yuan dares to provoke the God Race. Let them pay the price. Go. Bring 100,000 yuan breaking beasts. I don't believe that Ji Yuan can do anything to us. In the void, Bai Ning led the elites towards the God Race. Firstly, he didn't dare to stop. He was afraid that Go Yuzhan and the rest would chase after him. Secondly, he was afraid that the God Race would cause trouble. If he wasn't around, those idiots would send warmth to the enemy like Bai Ning. Moreover, his eyes kept twitching. He had a feeling that something was about to happen. All he could do was rush back as soon as possible. General Bai. At this moment, a god from the God Race flew over from the direction of the God Race. It's over. The moment he saw him, Bai Ning's face darkened. He knew that something bad was about to happen. What's wrong? Did the enemy attack from the south? Sir, you're right. Not long after you left, Ji Yuan attacked from the south. He's much more vicious than the north. The commanders of the God Race. They've attacked. Our commander said to wait for you, but they didn't listen. They said that you wouldn't be able to rush back. So they left early. F***CKU. Chapter 1954. Commander Bai, don't be angry. The Protoss elites saw Bai Ning throw down his helmet and spoke anxiously. The soldier who came to deliver the message was the same. The entire Outer Realm Protoss race knew of Bai Ning's accomplishments. If not for his past glory, Yale would not have used extreme measures to make him return. What Yale fancied was his ability. Judging from Bai Ning's expression just now, he really didn't want to be the commander-in-chief. The elites, regardless of their superiors or subordinates, all tried to comfort him. General, the Outer Realm Protoss cannot do without you. The entire Protoss race knows of your accomplishments. If you are not the commander, who else is qualified to sit in this position? Right, General Bai, the Epoch is attacking the Protoss race. The future of the Protoss race needs your existence. The Protoss race is in a mess now. Without you, the Protoss race will really... General Bai Ning understood the consolation of the Protoss race. A trace of regret flashed in his eyes. Bai Ning sighed and picked up the helmet again. He put it on his arm and waist, but did not buckle it. Continue being the commander? How could he? Which of the commanders really listened to his orders? They were all arrogant and felt that they should not be subordinate to anyone. Bai Yen opened the barrier, dead. The commanders inside the barrier started to attack the enemy again. By the time he rushed over, he would most likely be dead. The Outer Realm Protoss would suffer heavy losses this time. More importantly, the barrier was no longer as stable as it was in the past because it had been activated several times. The enemies of the Outer Epoch would probably attack their hinterlands soon. When that happened, the battlefield would be placed inside the Epoch. What would happen to the people inside? Foolish. These commanders were really foolish. They knew that they should believe in God Emperor Yale and stay inside the barrier, letting the Epoch continue to consume them. Even if the barrier would break sooner or later, at least, it would consume a lot of the Epoch's war preparations. That way, they would gain the most from a general attack against the Epoch. Now, one by one, they went out to send warmth. One wave after another, the originally strong military force was torn apart by them. Going out meant death. In fact, Bai Ning understood the commander's thoughts. They wanted to place the battlefield outside the Protoss race. But, from the moment the Epoch came to the Outer Realm, some things were destined, for example, the battlefield. It had to be in the God race. With so many cannons, whoever went out would die. The Outer Realm Divine race could only wait for them to break through the barrier and enter. General Bai. The elite gods were worried that Bai Ning was still angry, so they continued to comfort him. Bai Ning exhaled deeply again. Let's return. He said that he didn't want to do it because he was angry. Bai Ning's daughter was still in Yale's hands. How could he not do it? He believed that Yale had also expected such a situation. He made Bai Ning the commander-in-chief, so that he could use his experience to deal with the current situation. How to deal with it? However, it was a difficult problem for Bai Ning. Go back and lighten the troops. We'll make a decision when the time comes. Then the commander-in-chief and the others. Good luck to you then. It was obvious that Kai Ning didn't want to care about them anymore. Even if these idiots were saved, they would do something stupid again. Moreover, they had to take responsibility for their own actions. Dead. It could only be said that they were unlucky. To survive, he was just lucky. Right, one of you go and report to Lord Yale. Tell him about the situation, and let him make a decision. Bai Ning snorted. Some things had to be made clear. He didn't want to be the scapegoat. Kill them all. By now, the commander-in-chiefs had already left the barrier and arrived in the outside. Their troops. They were far more unyielding than Bai Yan's border guards. The high morale of the extraterritorial god race didn't need to say anything. They fearlessly charged forward against the cannon fire. They only had one goal: to kill all the enemies. Yeezy, the outsiders are coming out. The muzzles of the divine-powered cannons are starting to turn red. Should we withdraw the cannons? Yizichen gestured for the divine-powered cannons to rest. Instantly, the cannons were withdrawn and experts proficient in water techniques began to cool them down. The cannoneers, who'd been firing for an hour, sat paralyzed on the ground and rubbed their heads. Indeed, they could recover their spiritual energy with spirit recovery pills, but they couldn't erase their mental exhaustion. Especially Yizichen's request. They were aiming at those 10 points. Everyone was extremely focused, afraid that they would miss by even a centimeter. The logistics department began to transport supplies to the retreating soldiers. If they retreated, it would mean that, charge. To everyone's surprise, the demons were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Cain stood in the sky, clad in black imperial armor and wielding a sacred sword. 300,000 soldiers. 10 of them. Every single one of them was led by an imperial lord. They fearlessly clashed with the outsiders. After that, frost filled the sky. When the frost appeared, the temperature plummeted. Yi Zichen and Yin Shang couldn't help but pull themselves together. They all knew. This sudden drop in temperature was proof that the Ice Queen Su Lu had appeared. Meet the enemy. Her words were simple and to the point. At Su Lu's snort, the Yao experts charged after them. Yi Zichen even saw a few familiar faces among them. Zhuge Kongming, Little White. Xia Kiki was among them. In her golden dragon form, she led the entire dragon race. That wasn't all. Su Mei was there too. An old man stood by her side. From the looks of it, the old man was worried about danger and didn't want her to go up, but she refused. Warriors of the God Race, charge with me. The God Race finally took action. Great Emperor Bai An led the charge. Behind him, Yi Zichen saw a familiar Lu Jing. Even though she'd forgotten him. When he saw her, he couldn't help but smile faintly. Pu Jingwan. She was a gold medal bodyguard she'd tricked back from the First Era. She led an army of her own, but that divine surnamed brat followed her around like a shadow. Yi Zichen vaguely recalled how he'd fallen in love at first sight. It seemed he hadn't been joking back then. So much time had passed in the divine artifact, but he still hadn't forgotten about Big Sister Jingwan. Countless familiar faces flashed past Yi Zichen's eyes. The 9 divine mountains, the 7 great factions. They were divided mainly because of the central divine mountain. In order to transcend, Zhou Wu had refined the entire divine mountain. As for the northern divine mountain, almost all of them were dead. The experts of the other 2 divine mountains had joined the ranks of the other divine mountains to fight for the First Era's future. This battle, Ji Yuan didn't hold back at all. The first battle was a battle to raise morale. At this time, no matter who lost, it would have a huge impact on their own morale. Ji Yuan wanted to win. Chapter 1955. Commander, facing the era's experts, the gods of the extraterritorial celestial race could not help but be stunned. After that came a tidal wave of fear. There were too many of them. Right now, the Celestials, Demons and Demons Alliance had at least 10 times the extraterritorial celestial race. An oppressive difference in numbers. They were afraid that the extraterritorial celestial race's momentum would drop. How could this be? The extraterritorial celestial race commander was also shocked. He had investigated. He had chosen to send troops to meet the enemy because he had investigated the situation on the era's side. He had found out that there were only 300,000 troops. How could there be so many? It's the Space Dao. The thinner commander sighed. He was also the only one among the many commanders to say that they would wait for Bai Ning's return. Unfortunately, his voice alone was too weak. With the other commanders leaning towards meeting the enemy, he could only accompany them. Before coming, he had already suspected the era's military strength. He had also investigated. The result was about 300,000 intermediate deities. But was this reasonable? Attacking the extraterritorial celestial race with such great fanfare, could the era only send so few people? To provoke them? This was just foolhardy bravado. Angering the extraterritorial celestial race was definitely not good news for the era. There was only one possibility. They had set up an ambush. He had also thought of this, which was why he wanted to comfort them. Unfortunately, some of the commanders were unwilling to accept this. They did not want to always be under Bai Ning. They wanted to use an earth-shattering battle to prove their worth, to let God Emperor Yale see their ability. They were too eager to show off. They had already lost the ability to think. Seriously, it was somewhat puzzling that such a person could become a commander. Perhaps there was no first in literature, and no second in martial arts. The generals all wanted to stand at the top. People like him, who had no desires, could not understand their inner urgency. But it was not important now. There were experts from the era all around them. The million extraterritorial celestials were surrounded by the era, and it was difficult to find a way to break through. Even if they stubbornly resisted, It was only a matter of time before they were eaten away. Moreover, and the cannons. The era's cannons had been withdrawn. If the cannons joined the battle, how long could they last? We've been tricked. We can't get out. A sorrowful sigh came from the mouth of the more rational commander. The other commanders frowned deeply. The celestial beings of the celestial race were all in danger. Only the slaves were in a daze. They didn't have any emotions towards life or death. Humph! Don't give up too early. I really don't know why Lord Yale would allow someone like you to be on equal footing with us. The chief commander snorted angrily. It was clearly his fault that had caused the gods to be in such a predicament, but in his mouth, it was someone else's fault. It's just being surrounded. What's the point of being discouraged before we even attack? The epic era only has an advantage in numbers, but how can those lower planes compare to the combat power of us true gods? As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding gods were all shocked. That's right. Previously they had indeed placed too much emphasis on numbers, but they had forgotten about the gap between their realms. One had to know, a single deity king could instantly kill millions of true gods. What was the point of quantity at this point? When there was an absolute gap between realms, numbers were no longer a necessary factor in deciding the outcome of a battle. Era. Lower plane. Whether in terms of overall strength or individual combat power, they were no match for the extraterritorial celestial race. No matter how many of them there were, they were just a motley crew. The extraterritorial celestial race, they were the true strong soldiers. A motley crew wants to defeat our great celestial army? Is that even possible? Besides, we are not truly at a dead end. We know that if we hold on until Bai Ning brings reinforcements, the crisis will naturally be resolved. These people from the epic era should be all of their military power, but our extraterritorial celestial race still has tens of millions of celestial warriors and slaves that have yet to come out. Era. We will definitely lose. Roar! The extraterritorial celestial race raised their arms and cheered. With just a few words, they had raised the morale of the extraterritorial celestial race. The rational commander could not help but sigh when he saw this. Perhaps he really was not suited to lead troops. Indeed, he was just a scholar before, and leading troops to war was not his job. He was too rational. He could see some things more clearly. But sometimes, such rationality was not needed when leading troops to war. At least, under such circumstances, rationality was superfluous. But the rational commander could not help but think, would Bai Ning really come to save them? He did not understand Bai Ning. But from his actions, he was an arrogant person. He did not want to be associated with idiots. The actions of these commanders were exactly what Bai Ning thought were idiots. Would he really risk his life for a bunch of idiots? Before he saw the result, everything was unknown. He was clear, but he could not say it. He did not want to drag down the morale that had been raised with great difficulty because of his words. Moreover, he was also one of these idiots. If he wanted to live, he really had to fight with his life. Kill. There were no unnecessary words, and there was no need for any unnecessary words. The rational commander laughed and waved his arm. All the extraterritorial celestial race subordinates charged forward. And there was no hesitation in his eyes. Retreat was death. Only by advancing could one survive. They move quite fast. Commander Laley snorted when he saw this. He also pointed his sword forward. Meet the enemy! General Bai, the head count is done. Speak! There are 14 million celestial warriors and 20 million slaves left in the enchantment. Is that all? Bai Ning, who was sitting on a rock, frowned slightly. His white hair danced in the wind. If we include the lower and lower celestial warriors, there are more than 100 million, no need. The lower celestial warriors are useless in this battle. It is impossible for the epoch to send such people over. They are just sending themselves to death. Although Bai Ning's eyes were old, they shone with wisdom. He took a deep breath and looked at the logistics officer in front of him. He knew that he had reported the troops of the extraterritorial celestial race after they had integrated. Outside, the artillery fire had stopped. What was even more chilling than the sound of the artillery was the countless roars of killing. There was no need to go out. Just the roars alone showed how fierce the battle was. The general, some of the celestial warriors wanted to say something but stopped. The battle outside had been going on for almost an hour. Eagle Eye had already investigated. The number of people from the epoch outside was 10 times that of the commanders. If they did not go to rescue them, it was only a matter of time before they were eaten away. Chapter 1956. Bai Ning's words silenced everyone. Yes. Even now, Ji Yuan had been attacking the Outerium Celestials for 2 hours, but this person, who was like the soul of the Outerium Celestials, still hadn't appeared. No one knew what he was doing. Those who went to see him were all turned away. Their God Emperor, at this moment, it was as if he didn't want to care about all of this. He didn't care about the life and death of the Outerium Celestials. He was so cold that no one dared to speak. Divine Palace. The old God Emperor had fallen, and Yale had inherited his palace. Whether it was the layout of the palace or anything else, there were no changes, not even any renovations. But to Yale, this was all a waste. Lord Yale, General Bai Ning's people are here again. Tell him to scram. Lord Ji Yuan has already fought outside the barrier. Several commanders are in prison. If you don't show up now, I'm afraid the Outerium Celestials will suffer heavy casualties. Then let them die. Cold. Heartless. When Yale's words came out of the room, the overlord outside the door trembled. Before he could digest it, Yale's disdainful whisper sounded again. This emperor has said countless times that the Outerium Celestials don't need trash. The entire Milky Way doesn't need useless people who waste resources. If even a tiny era can't resist, then it means that they don't deserve to live in the future that this emperor is about to establish. If there's nothing else, don't bother this emperor. If you say another word, this emperor will kill you too. In an instant, the overlord outside knelt down. Immediately, there was a miserable wail in the room. I really don't know what you're still resisting. Don't forget, this godhead of yours belongs to this emperor. Yale stared at the old man in front of him. At this moment, this old man was chained to a cross. In between his brows, there was a pitch-black light. Through his messy white hair, one could vaguely see the pitch-black godhead in between his brows. The old man's lips twitched weakly. Stop dreaming. I've long refined the godhead. Now it only belongs to me. You'd better put away your trick. Qinglan, is this interesting? When the old man's voice fell, Yale shrugged helplessly. Qinglan. The old man in front of him was Qinglan. Ever since he was captured by Yale, he had been subjected to inhumane torture. And Yale's goal, it was to extract his godhood and fuse it with his own body. In order to succeed, Yale continuously tortured him, depleting his life force. At this time, Qinglan, who had once been able to fight a god king, did not have many months left to live. Yale had specially left it for him. If Qinglan died, even if he obtained the godhood, it would take a lot of effort to nourish it. Yale didn't have the time and patience to do so. Your divine power has been sealed by me. You can't even self-destruct. What's the point of persisting like this? Why don't you give the godhood to this empress and let this godhood that belongs to you and me shine? Qinglan, you and I are best friends. Yale played the pity card, but at this time, the pity card was so ridiculous. Best friend. If they were really good friends, how could Yale treat Qinglan like this? Qinglan ignored him and snorted softly. Qinglan, don't be so shameless. Bang! Yale abruptly slammed the table, turning the semi-divine artifact table into dust. This emperor has 4 godheads. This emperor is determined to get your special godhead. Give me the divine spark, and it will elevate the entire Milky Way galaxy. This emperor is creating a new future, creating the position of the Milky Way galaxy's future overlord. Your stubbornness is obstructing this Emperor's path. They are obstructing the future of the Milky Way galaxy. Divine Emperor Yale. He used thunderous methods to obtain the position of Divine Emperor. After Divine Emperor Yale ascended to the throne, the god race's way of doing things immediately underwent an earth-shattering change. Invasion. Destroy. Those who resisted were all slaughtered, and those who bowed their heads were all turned into slaves. Furthermore, Yale was not only ruthless towards people from other planes, he was equally ruthless towards people from the outer realm's celestial race. He was indignant. Just die. As long as he submitted, his family would not die. Moreover, even if they wanted to submit, Yale would not accept them all. He would only agree to submit to someone he thought was worth living. Trash, they would still have to die. This was Yale, the one who wanted to shake the entire Milky Way galaxy. He wanted to leave only the elites in the Milky Way galaxy and elevate it. This was his ideal. That's right. He did not slaughter for the sake of slaughtering. He also had his ideals, his ambitions and aspirations. In his opinion, the Milky Way galaxy was so afraid of foreign enemies because there were too many people who wasted resources here. If the people who remained were all elites, if the resources were used on them, they would receive an exponential increase. Then, who would the Milky Way galaxy be afraid of? Right now, this was Yale's first step in elevating the Milky Way galaxy. He had never told anyone about his grand ambitions. Qinglan was the only one. Stop dreaming. You won't succeed. Qinglan looked at Yale with a somewhat pitiful gaze. Elevating the Milky Way galaxy. The position of overlord. This guy was crazy. She closed her eyes in disdain and ignored Yale. At this moment, Yale suddenly stood up. 4 godheads hovered above his head. 3 golden ones. 1 white one. That's right. These godheads belonged to the second-era primordial demon emperor, emotional divine king, and divine emperor. Roar, there was also his sealed divine spark. At this moment it had already been unsealed. The 4 godheads did not interfere with each other. They circled above his head in a clockwise order. Look. This emperor will let you see. Yale grabbed Qinglan's head and pointed at the godhead above his head. Do you see? Do you see? The godheads are all in this emperor's body, but this emperor did not explode. This emperor is opening up a new future. Why don't you believe me? I didn't say that I don't believe you, Qinglan said. Then why don't you give me the godhead? Yale roared. You don't deserve it. It was just 3 simple words, but Yale retreated a few steps as if he had been dealt a blow. I don't deserve it. Ha ha. You said that this emperor doesn't deserve it. This godhead belongs to this emperor. You dare say that this emperor doesn't deserve it? Ha ha ha. In an instant, Yale's gaze turned cold. Qinglan, this emperor remembers old times. I want you to die with dignity, but you are really too stubborn. In that case, this emperor can only take it personally. You will fail. Fail? As long as this emperor. I'm talking about your grand blueprint, Qinglan said. In your eyes, the weak don't deserve to live. You should pay attention to the strong. If you want to elevate the Milky Way galaxy, you will fail. Impossible. No one can stop this emperor. Chapter 1957. The extraterritorial Protoss in armor was covered in blood. Blood and sweat mixed together, dripping down their noses and chins. Commander, Vanguard, in order to last longer, the extraterritorial Protoss formation did not engage in a chaotic battle. Instead, they tried their best to maintain the original formation. Several true gods ran in from outside. On their backs, there was a man who was covered in blood and wounds. He was the vanguard appointed by the commander to lead 100,000 true gods to defend against the enemy. Not long ago, 100,000 true gods were annihilated. As a vanguard, he had escaped death. It was not easy for him to run back from the chaotic battle. He was still breathing. Commander, when the rescued vanguard saw the commander, his eyes were filled with guilt and self-blame. "Your subordinate failed to complete the task you gave me. I'm afraid you will be disappointed." The current situation of the vanguard could only be described as hanging by a thread. It was as if he said one more word, his life force would be depleted a little. The true god warrior who was carrying him secretly wiped his tears. His elder brother was among the vanguard just now. They were all annihilated. This meant that his elder brother was also killed. This was inevitable. There would always be casualties in war. To survive a war, one not only needed strength, but also a little bit of luck. "You have done very well." The commander nodded at the vanguard and said to the true god, "Bring the vanguard to recuperate." The true god carried the vanguard away. The commander's eyes instantly darkened. Not long ago, he had already received the news that the vanguard had been annihilated. To be honest, he was shocked. These 100,000 vanguard were the elites he found among the people who came out. His goal was to turn them into a sharp-blade army and provide some trouble for Ji Yuan. The vanguard was his proudest subordinate. Defeated, and it was very thorough. He estimated the time. From the formation of the vanguard to the annihilation, there was no change of 2 hours. In such a short time, the commander did not expect this. In his opinion, these vanguard could resist for a few hours, and if they wanted to retreat, it would be difficult for Ji Yuan to stop them. Although there would be casualties, it would not be so serious. Annihilated? Could it be that he had really underestimated Ji Yuan? As soon as this thought appeared, the commander-in-chief hurriedly shook his head and discarded it. He was the commander-in-chief. He was the most authoritative person among the commanders who had come out this time. His every word and action affected the morale of the army. Even if he really suspected that he had underestimated Ji Yuan's power, he could not show it. Moreover, how could he deny himself? Having been in the Outerium god race for so long, he had experienced no less than 10,000 major and minor battles. That war was not a blessing in disguise. He had to believe in his own decisions. Only when he believed in himself would his subordinates believe in him. "He's here. Commander." Someone ran over. "There are still no signs of the god race's reinforcements?" He had been waiting for reinforcements for so long. Ji Yuan's power was beyond his expectations. Now, they could only survive if Bai Ning came to rescue them. Unfortunately, the answer he got was a dejected shake of his head. "This subordinate has been paying attention to the direction of the god race. He has no intention of helping us at all." As soon as he finished speaking, the man said impatiently, "Commander, Ji Yuan's people are fighting too fiercely. Most of our slaves are dead. 60% of the Yuan-breaking beasts are dead, 20% are injured, and 20% are fighting. If this goes on, we—" "Shut up!" The commander glared and snorted angrily. "I'm here, what are you afraid of? Even if I die, I'll die with you. But I don't want to die, Commander. I still have. Pull him away." Immediately, 2 more people appeared on the commander's side to pull him down, but he could still be heard shouting along the way. "Commander, I don't want to die." He didn't want to die. Who would want to die? Did any of the Outerium god race members who came out want to die? All of them came out with the thought of killing the enemy, accumulating battle merits, and returning alive. But war, even if it was a one-sided massacre, there would be casualties. The commander clenched his fist. The god's emotional breakdown made him realize that the situation was not good. Morale had collapsed. Whether it was the annihilation of the vanguard, the deaths of the Outerium god race and the Yuan-breaking beasts, or the consumption of slaves. These familiar words that kept climbing up in the hearts of the Outerium gods, it was like a sledgehammer hammering down on their chests. "Yeezy, let's not waste time with these people," Emperor Hades advised. In truth, he was anxious to fight his way into the Outerium. Yale had captured Su Yen, and it was unknown whether she was dead or alive. As her elder brother, he'd always been worried about her. However, he trusted Yi Zichen and understood that he was more anxious than anyone else. Yi Zichen had to have a plan. In order to avoid ruining his plans, Emperor Hades held his tongue. But now, he couldn't hold back any longer. Yi Zichen glanced at him, saw his anxiety, and nodded silently. It's time to pull in the net. Yin, you go. Kill that commander and have the Outerium spread the news. Which commander? The Outerium god race had sent quite a few commanders this time. However, only one of them remained in the camp. The others were fighting with the great emperors outside. Whichever one it is, as long as it's not in the formation. Understood. Without any hesitation, Su Yun strode through the chaotic battle between the Outerium god race and Era Yuan and headed off in search of a commander. Yi Zichen watched silently as everything unfolded. He was anxious. More anxious than anyone else. He was worried about Yi Rong, Su Yan, and the others. He wanted nothing more than to slaughter his way into the Outerium god race territory and rescue them. However, was that even possible? Never mind Yale, who was overseeing the Outerium god race. Just his troops were enough to cause Yi Zichen enormous trouble. The current situation was like a game of checkpoints. If he wanted to reach his goal, he'd have to break through them step by step. This was the first checkpoint. Who knew how many more checkpoints awaited him? Yi Zichen couldn't afford to waste too much strength here. Strength. That referred to Era Yuan's experts. He'd slowly whittled away at the Outerium god race's forces and annihilated the vanguard officials. This was all to preserve as much strength as possible. Although the Outerium god race was resisting, in truth, they were only one step away from surrendering. That one step was not good. The Outerium commander died in battle. Accompanied by a thunderous exclamation, everyone saw a scholarly general with a faint smile on his face, hanging from Ming Di's longsword. Chapter 1958. Yezi, it's done. Ming Di held a bloody head in his hand. It hadn't been long since it was cut off, and there was still blood slowly dripping from the bottom. He was different from the others. If other people were killed by the enemy, their eyes would be filled with despair. He felt somewhat relieved. There was a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. There was a smile on his face, and it was a smile of contentment. Killed him. Yi Zichen glanced at it briefly, then stopped looking. Emperor Ming nodded and covered his head with a white cloth. This guy is very strange. When I went over, he didn't resist at all. It was as if he had been waiting for me. When my sword pierced his body, he actually laughed. To be honest, he's the last person I want you to kill. What? Ming Di was dumbfounded. The hand holding the head was at a loss of what to do. It's fine. So what if he's killed? Since he's from the god race, there's nothing wrong with him killing him. He is indeed the commander-in-chief. You didn't do anything wrong. Yi Zichen shook his head with a smile. Go, use this head to tell the Outer Realm god race that their commander has been killed. If they want to live, they should put down their weapons. If you resist stubbornly, you shall bear the consequences. Understood. Only after Emperor Hades left did Yi Zichen sigh. He didn't say anything else to Su Yun. Indeed, he hadn't done anything wrong. Even if he had, Yi Zichen wouldn't blame him. However, it was a pity that the commander had died. He was very special. In particular, Yi Zichen couldn't help but notice him. Among the commanders of the Outer Realm god race, there was also the commander who, for some reason, was still able to sit firmly in such a situation. His realm was the highest. He didn't have the murderous aura that the others had, and there wasn't the slightest smell of blood on him. He was as elegant as a scholar. In this era, in this place, who could say that they didn't have a few lives on their hands? In this world where only the strong were respected and there were no restrictions of the law, human lives were sometimes as worthless as grass. Even the epics who played the role of justice, those great emperors and empresses, even cute girls like Xia Kiki had killed people before, hadn't they? Yi Zichen did the same. He didn't just kill, and he killed a lot of them. Anyone could smell the scent of blood on them, except for this general. He was so elegant that he could not feel the slightest trace of blood. He hadn't killed anyone. Even if it was an insignificant person, or a demon that had yet to reach adulthood, he had nothing. Even in the war between the Outterium god race and Ji-Yuan, he had only injured someone. Even if they tried to assassinate him several times, he only beat that person until he lost the ability to move, but he didn't take his life. In order to prevent that person from dying after losing the ability to move, he even sent him to a safe place. Facing the enemy, Yi Zichen knew that he couldn't do that. This great battle was caused by the Outterium god race's Yale. In order to live, Ji-Yuan had no choice but to resist. Yi Zichen could tolerate those normal people, but when it came to those who brandished the butcher's knife against Ji-Yuan, even if they were forced to, Yi Zichen couldn't forgive them so easily. But the commander-in-chief, Yi Zichen, was willing to let him live. There were no conditions, and he was allowed to decide his own path of survival. Unfortunately, he was dead. If he died, so be it. Yi Zichen stretched lazily, then cracked his neck a few times. Emperor Hades continued to act according to plan. Yi Zichen trusted that nothing would deviate from his predictions. It was time for him to move. The commander-in-chief looked down at his feet. He'd watched with his own eyes as Ji-Yuan's experts nibbled away at his subordinates. He looked at the Outterium god race. The primordial beasts he'd spent millions of years raising fell one by one. He couldn't bear to watch any longer. He didn't want to watch any longer. This battle, lost. He was going to be utterly defeated. Although he hadn't brought too many soldiers with him, the primordial beasts were the Outterium's strongest weapons of war. He'd brought them with him. These primordial beasts. They could be considered the foundation of the god race. If they lost, even if he survived, Yale wouldn't let him off the hook. Commander-in-Chief. What are they? General Bai Ning's reinforcements. The commander-in-chief almost instantly rushed forward. He was in too much of a hurry. If Bai Ning arrived and they worked together, they might be able to preserve some of their forces. They'd return to the Outterium and reorganize. They still had the power to fight against Ji-Yuan. This time, he really had been too rash. Even if Bai Ning berated him, he wouldn't have a single word of complaint. As long as he could go back, he'd have a chance to start all over again. His recklessness wasn't without its benefit. He'd gained an intuitive understanding of Ji-Yuan's power. After returning and obtaining this information, they'd be able to discuss a better strategy. As long as Bai Ning, Commander-in-Chief, General Bai Ning, didn't come. Then what are you doing here? Get lost. The Commander-in-Chief roared. He'd said it countless times. If Bai Ning's reinforcements hadn't arrived, they shouldn't bother him. These soldiers. Didn't they have brains? Why did they bother him over and over again? Commander-in-Chief, Mr. is dead. What Mr.? What does his death have to do with me? So many Misters have died. Should I mourn for them? As his voice fell, the Commander-in-Chief's shoulders shook violently. Who did you say, Mr.? Outterium god race, listen up. Your Commander-in-Chief has been obliterated. Our era's Star Lord has the virtue of cherishing life. Put down the weapons in your hands and give up resisting. Our era can spare your lives. If you resist stubbornly, you'll have to bear the consequences. Outterium god race, listen up. Your Commander-in-Chief. Emperor Hades' howl reverberated through the outer realms. The era army's morale soared. They raised their arms and cheered. The Outterium god race gods. When they saw this, they couldn't help but stare in shock. Their weapons slipped from their hands. Everything was just as Yi Zichen had predicted. Their final perseverance crumbled after their Commander-in-Chief's death. More and more gods threw down their weapons. Some stubborn ones tried to kill a few more, but the era army's experts stabbed them to death. The Outteriums had been routed. When the Commander-in-Chief saw this, he sat in the sky in a daze. He really was dead. There was no need to lie to himself and say that the Era army had faked it. He knew that person far too well. So well that even though the head was covered in blood, he recognized it at a glance. How is this possible? How is this possible? How could the Outerium God race lose? How could I lose? None of you are allowed to surrender. Fight the enemy with me. Chapter 1959. The Commander-in-Chief whipped his head around. He looked like a judge of the underworld. His pitch-black eyes were cold and distant, and he sent chills down everyone's spines. You, even your subordinates, have the right to decide whether they live or die. You're being too arbitrary. The black-robed man chuckled slowly. The gods around the Commander-in-Chief instinctively retreated several dozen meters. They knew. This black-robed young man who looked to be in his 20s was the supreme commander of this era, the Star Lord of this era's Emperor Star. There was no way they didn't know each other. Early on, they'd investigated the other planes. They'd made a system announcement about everyone at or above management level, especially the era rulers. Yi Zichen had visited the outside when the previous emperor signed the treaty. For a variety of reasons, every outsider participating in the war probably knew of Yi Zichen's existence and what he looked like. Who told you to retreat? Get back here. When he saw the retreating gods, the Commander-in-Chief's eyes blazed with fury. He threw his head back and roared. The gods were afraid of him. When they saw him, they couldn't help but subconsciously tighten their grips on their weapons, as if they wanted to retreat. Just follow your heart and it will be fine. The Commander-in-Chief smiled at the cowardly gods, then waved them down. Then he looked back at the Commander-in-Chief. In truth, you're quite interesting. Even in a situation like this, you still want your subordinates to charge into battle for you. But you, Commander-in-Chief, you're sitting in the safest position, waiting for your soldiers to report victory. Do you think you're doing your job well? That's none of your business, said the Commander-in-Chief with a frown. Fine, I spoke too much. Yi Zichen turned around indifferently. He no longer wanted to waste words with the Commander-in-Chief. Before long, he'd be escorted away. In this battle outside the barrier, the Outer Realm God race had already lost. The surrounding extraterritorial gods subconsciously made way for them. Yi Zichen headed straight for the Era ruler's camp. He naturally couldn't just enter the outsider's territory. He'd only deal with the gods who'd come out to die. The barrier was still there. If he wanted to break it, he'd need the divine-powered cannons. As for Yi Zichen, he needed to conserve his strength. He had to keep himself in peak condition before fighting Yale. He couldn't afford to waste any more energy. Just like that, the Commander-in-Chief was left behind. He stared intently at Yi Zichen's back, as if he were a wild beast preparing to feast. He looked in the direction of the Outer Realm God clan. Bai Ning's reinforcements still showed no signs of coming. After the death of their master, the soldiers' last line of defense was also shattered. One by one, they threw down the weapons in their hands and were escorted by Ji Yuan. The essence-breaking beasts were all kneeling on the ground. The other commanders were all like defeated soldiers waiting for Ji Yuan to take them away. They all gave up. No one did any unnecessary struggle. They could do that. But as the Commander-in-Chief, he could not. Everything was planned by him, but he had to admit that it was the most brainless decision he had ever made. As a result, the gods of the Outer Realms were going to become the new era's captives. As the Commander-in-Chief, he could not absolve himself from the blame for this defeat. When he returned to the Outerium God race, Yale would definitely make him atone for his crimes with death. Surrender without a fight, Ji Yuan couldn't let him live either. He would die no matter what. The moment he decided to come out to face the enemy, his future was already set in stone. Then, why would he surrender? A cold glint shot out from his eyes, but it was retracted in an instant. He had to make a decision. Was he going to become a defeated general, accept Ji Yuan's judgment, and fight for the hope of survival that was almost impossible? Or was he going to do one last thing for the Outerium god race, fail, die? If he succeeded, his name would spread far and wide. Even if the chances of success were minuscule. He'd decided. To him, this was his last chance. Boom! The Commander-in-Chief's aura instantly rose to its peak. Yi Zichen, who was walking in front, felt the wind blow against his clothes. A smile flashed across his face, but he didn't slow down at all. Star Lord Ji Yuan, you want to ambush us? What do you take us for? Boom! Scorching flames instantly enveloped the Commander-in-Chief, turning him into a blazing ball of fire. Practically no one knew what had happened. Whether it was the Outerium gods or the Era experts, they were all busy escorting captives or waiting to be escorted. When they came back to their senses, they saw a blazing ball of fire that looked like the sun. Within the flames, they didn't know it was their Commander-in-Chief who was burning. Only those who were close to him knew all of this. When they saw the flames, they instinctively lowered their heads, not daring to look at them. Do you want me to add some ingredients to give him a fusion of fire and water? The water elemental sprite perched lazily on Yi Zichen's shoulder, while the other sprites followed him. No need. Let Lil Fire play for a while and then come back. Don't you want to save Ol 5? Save some elemental power. We can't afford to be careless with the people we're going to deal with. The flames blazed. However, it was an extremely insignificant interlude to the outer realms at this moment. They'd lost. They were waiting for the Era Lord to capture them. The Era Lord's experts were brimming with fighting spirit. They either helped with the captives or brought the wounded to be treated. The Era Lord had died. But this was unavoidable. Before coming, they'd already made ample mental preparations. Death offered them hope for the future. Besides, to the Era Lord, compared to the outer realms, these deaths were a complete victory. Zichen, why did you run over there? Didn't I tell you not to run around? As soon as he returned to face the enemy, Zhuemo cursed him to his face. When the other Era Lord experts saw this, they merely snickered. Only Zhuemo dared curse at Yi Zichen like this. I had no choice. If I hadn't gone, that guy might really have surrendered. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes, but I don't want him to surrender. I want him to die. He was the mastermind, and he was the one who'd wanted to reap the spoils of war. He was the one who'd caused the Era Lord's casualties. How could they let someone like that live? What a joke. How's the divine-powered cannons rest? After this battle, the outside probably won't take the initiative to attack again. We'll need the divine-powered cannon to keep firing and break through the Era Lord's barrier. It's pretty much cooled down. If we don't worry about the damage, we can fire continuously for a day, but after that, we won't be able to use it again. Alright. Chapter 1960. Inside the camp, Bai Ning sat in front of his desk. Below him were 6 commanders and 24 deputy generals. The remaining 6 commanders were located in a more remote position. Although the outer realm Protoss had been under constant artillery fire, there were sounds of artillery fire from the north and south. Even if they rushed to help, they did not know where to go. Their only decision was to defend themselves. They would stay in the area that Commander Bai Ning had demarcated. As long as they were not under attack and Commander Bai Ning did not ask for help, they would not move. At this moment they would be here. They were under Bai Ning's command. And sitting here, looking at the 24 deputy generals, they could not help but feel a little emotional about their decision at that time. Fortunately, when the other commanders came to help, they did not act rashly. If they had come in a hurry, they might have followed in the footsteps of the 24 commanders. They heard that they were all dead. If not for the deaths of those commanders, these deputy generals would not have had the chance to rise. But they did not understand, was the era really that strong? The Outer Realm Protoss had been attacking cities and plundering lands for half a year. Everywhere they went was either destroyed or became a slave plane. Even if it was some of the higher-ranked planes, it was the same. A small era panting under the shadow of the Outer Realm Protoss, there were not many Lord Realm experts in the entire era. They could defeat the Outer Realm Protoss, and they had 24 commanders and hundreds of thousands of troops. One must know that these commanders were all Lord level and above. Among the Lord level, they were also the best. But no matter how puzzled they did not dare to say anything. Commander Bai Ning's expression was very ugly. Since they arrived, this commander had been sitting in front of the commander's desk without saying a word. His gloomy face seemed to be dripping water. The pressure in the camp was so low that even the Lord-level experts found it hard to breathe. Bang! At this moment, Bai Ning suddenly slammed the desk. This slap caused the hearts of the commander-in-chief and deputy generals in the camp to tremble. What is Yale trying to do? Calling Yale by his name. Was Bai Ning crazy? The commanders and deputy generals knelt on the ground almost instantly. Yale, he was not a god king now, but a high and mighty god emperor. Even a god king, a lord-level person, had to respectfully address him as lord. Bai Ning was in this period. When Yale was in power, he still dared to use such a disrespectful tone to criticize Divine Emperor Yale. He wanted to die, the people at the bottom didn't want to die. He was kneeling to Yale, hoping that the Divine Emperor would not vent his anger on him. More than 10 times. Send all my men back. He didn't say a word and didn't give any orders. What does this deity emperor want to do? Could it be that the god clan of the Outer Realm is dispensable to him? Bai Ning was so angry that his beard trembled. He bowed his head for a long time, but he didn't feel the anger from above. He slowly got up from the ground. Commander Bai, you dare to sit? What, aren't you afraid that Yale will convict you? How could the commander-in-chief and deputy generals not be afraid when they called him by his name? Everyone looked at the sky carefully. Then, one of the commanders stood up with an apologetic smile. Commander Bai, please calm down. What are you trying to say, you old fox? Bai Ning recognized the commander who spoke. He was an old man from the same generation as her. At that time, he was the commander, and this old fellow was a deputy. It was true that everything was possible when one lived for a long time. He, who wasn't outstanding in terms of ability or strength, actually became a commander now. Thinking of this, Bai Ning couldn't help but mourn for the god clan of the Outer Realm. The younger generation didn't produce any talents, and no one could replace their position. That was why the god clan of the Outer Realm declined. Commander Bai, don't be angry. I know you're angry. Lord Yale has never given you clear instructions, and anyone would be at a loss as to what to do. But Lord Yale definitely cares about our god clan, otherwise what? Care about the god clan, or do you want to fulfill his ambitions? Old fellow, don't you understand? Bai Ning attacked him mercilessly, and the old fox was also speechless. Understand? Of course he understood. If Yale attacked other planes at the beginning, it was like a new official making 3 changes. He wanted to establish the god clan of the Outer Realm as the overlord. The attacks after that, he didn't care about the survival of the god clan at all. The god emperor of the god clan of the Outer Realm had just died. Yale took the position in the name of usurpation, and used thunderous means to shut up the people below him. At that time, the corpses of the god clan were everywhere. All those who disobeyed him were dead. The god clan suffered great losses. Actually, he should have let the god clan develop for a period of time. But what Yale did was attack. Crazy attack. There was no end to the attacks. During this period of time, he also issued certain death orders to the various commanders. If they couldn't take it down, they would bring their heads. The time given was pitifully little. They could win. It was completely based on the high-end bloodline of the god clan, and their overall strength being superior to other planes. But after their triumphant return, there was no rest, continue to attack. For a long time, the god clan of the Outer Realm were in a frenzy of killing. Exhaustion? No way. If he told you to kill, you had to kill. If you didn't, then you would die. Who knew how many of them had gone crazy from killing, their eyes red from killing, even killing their own people? There were also those who couldn't bear the torture and committed suicide. There were many. Was this for the God clan of the Outer Realm? Absolutely not. Everyone knew that Yale didn't do it for the God clan of the Outer Realm, but who dared to say it? Those who dared to say it were all dead. Those who wanted to survive could only grit their teeth and continue to persevere. Look at those God clan members outside. Their exhaustion could be seen on everyone's face. They couldn't rest. Rest was the dregs that Yale said were a waste of resources. Dregs were equivalent to death. Not only was the old fox silent, the other commanders and deputy generals were also indifferent. They couldn't say anything else. Yale is ambitious. That's understandable. I can fulfill his ambition for my daughter. But what is he doing now? Bai Ning slammed the table and roared. How long has it been? It's almost been 24 hours. He, the God Emperor, hasn't appeared, and the cannons outside have been bombarding for several hours. The people I sent have all been scolded and returned. What does he want me to do? Maybe Lord Yale trusts you. This kind of low pressure was ultimately not the solution to the problem. One of the deputy generals spoke. This subordinate suggests that we face the enemy. Maybe the commanders are still alive. If we go out, we might, then go out. Chapter 1961. Hearing that, the deputy general shut his mouth. Whether Bai Ning's words were spoken out of anger or not, 300,000 soldiers seemed like a lot, but none of the commanders and deputy generals dared to say that they could save the people with 300,000 soldiers. Nearly 1,000,000 people were trapped. 300,000 soldiers were just there to provide warmth. They were just there to prepare for Yuan. Bai Ning's words and gaze made everyone in the camp speechless. The deputy general hesitated for a while. Then, he sat back down, embarrassed. The cannons were still roaring outside. Bai Ning looked at the other commanders in the camp. From their eyes, he could see that they had something to say. They were afraid of him, so they didn't dare to speak their minds. I know what you're thinking. As soon as he said that, all the commanders in the camp looked at him. Do you think that I'm too cold-blooded or conservative? Commander, that's what you think. Bai Ning smiled gently. He got up and walked to the gate of the camp, looking at the mighty God clan army outside. These gods were looking up at the flames of the cannons above their heads. Yuan has come to our door, but I, the commander, don't do anything. The commanders are in trouble, but I still don't do anything. I'm still waiting here for Yale's news. You think I'm old, don't you? No one dared to speak their minds in this situation. They all lowered their heads in embarrassment or looked around, unwilling to meet Bai Ning's eyes. Don't look at me. Come. You old fox, speak. No one spoke, so Bai Ning directly called out names. The old fox smiled dryly and didn't speak. Bai Ning didn't make things difficult for him. He pointed at another commander. There were 6 commanders and 24 deputy generals. No one dared to say a word. If you don't dare to speak, I'll speak. At this moment, a soldier who was not qualified to take a seat and was standing guard at the entrance of the camp shouted angrily. The other commanders looked at him. Bai Ning also looked at him. He had seen this soldier before. On his way back from rescuing Bai Yen, it was this soldier who reported to him that the commanders had taken the initiative to fight the enemy. Commander Bai Ning, why didn't you come to the rescue? Perhaps in your eyes those commanders are a bunch of idiots, but our commander was forced into a corner. He asked me to stay behind and report the situation to you so that you could use your experience to send reinforcement. But you, idiot? Bai Ning looked at the soldier with interest. Did your commander say that to you? Yes, the soldier said. He's a smart man. Bai Ning nodded and smiled. That's right, those people are idiots in my eyes. And your husband is the same. Since he knew he would die, why did he still go? This is not stupidity, this is what? He knows I won't. To save an idiot, why does he want to be this idiot again? Bai Ning did not give the soldier a chance to refute. But I don't think he's that stupid. He's a smart man. He was the commander-in-chief. If he refused, no one would be able to order him to go. There's only one possibility. He's willing to die. The soldier was furious and clenched his fists tightly. This kind of anger was not threatening to Bai Ning at all. He slowly walked toward the soldier. The people around him thought that the soldier was going to die. Unexpectedly, it must be hard for a woman to disguise as a man. Bai Ning patted the soldier's head gently, and then a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Your commander-in-chief is Mr. Li, right? You are actually his daughter. A trace of panic flashed in the soldier's eyes, and his teeth bit his lips gently. Among these commanders, the only one I think is smart is him. I feel that he's the most pitiful one. His realm is very high, and even I can't say that I can beat him in a few moves. But he's too kind. He was born in a war, but he has the heart of a bodhisattva. He's not suitable to be a commander-in-chief. He went this time because he didn't want to torture himself anymore. He left you not because he wanted me to help, but because he wanted to take care of you. As he spoke, the sadness in Bai Ning's eyes deepened. Maybe you and my daughter will become very good friends in the future, but I don't know when she will return to my side. Guards! Thump, thump, thump. A few divine warriors ran in from outside the camp. Bai Ning pointed at the soldier and said, "Take Miss Li to the settlement area. Let go of me, I want to kill the enemy, I want to avenge my father." You cold-blooded people, is my father's life so insignificant to you? Have you forgotten how my father answered your questions and helped you break through the shackles? You bunch of ungrateful people. Miss Li was dragged away in the end. After her identity was exposed, she didn't disguise her voice anymore. But no matter how she scolded, no one would respond. Mr. Li's fate was unknown, or rather, he had already died in battle. The people in their camp didn't know. But seriously, most of them had received pointers from Mr. Li. Damn! Maybe it was because Bai Ning's words hit the nail on the head. One of the deputy generals suddenly stood up. I'm willing to bring people to rescue Mr. Li. I'm indebted to him, I can't just sit back and do nothing. Commander-in-Chief Bai, please give me 300,000 elite soldiers and 50,000 yuan-breaking beasts, I will. Elite soldiers can, but yuan-breaking beasts. Bai Ning smiled. No. General, the yuan-breaking beasts are bred for war. If we don't use them now, then when? I don't want too many, just 50,000 yuan-breaking beasts. No, Bai Ning said. Don't you understand? No. As soon as he finished, Bai Ning slammed the table and shouted angrily. What do you think I'm waiting for? Why am I waiting for Yale's orders? It's because we don't have any yuan-breaking beasts, they've all been taken away by those idiots. Now, the Outer Realm's celestial race doesn't even have a single yuan-breaking beast, let alone 50,000. Crack. When a cup in the hands of a commander was crushed, it was like a chain reaction. The sound of cups shattering or hitting the table could be heard. No, they were all taken away. Many commanders looked at Bai Ning blankly. They watched as Bai Ning sat in front of the table and pressed the veins on his arms. Bai Ning didn't want to fight anymore? He wanted to too. But as the strongest war weapon of the Outer Realm's celestial race, even the yuan-breaking beasts had been taken away. What could he use to fight Ji-Yuan? Without the yuan-breaking beasts to block the cannons, would he use his human body to block the cannons? General Bai, then what do you think we should? The generals panicked. Without the yuan-breaking beasts, the combat power of the Outer Realm's celestial race would drop by several times. Wait for Yale's news, Bai Ning said. Chapter 1962. Victors always held their heads high. Go Yuzhan was the same. His mission had been a success. Not only had he succeeded, he had also exceeded his expectations. He had not wasted a single soldier. He had saved many resources and even captured a general of the celestial race. Liu Li also accepted his explanation and obtained Bai Yan's armor. On the way back, a hogue on his head swayed back and forth. Boom boom boom. From afar, Go Yuzhan's victorious army could hear the rumbling of the god-powered cannons. The soldiers pushed the god-powered cannons back to the main camp with their heads held high. Go and rest, I will go and see the Emperor's star. Go Yuzhan signaled for his men to disperse as he grabbed Bai Yan's shirt and walked towards the main camp. Before Go Yuzhan returned, everyone had received news of his return and were waiting in the main camp. Go in. Go Yuzhan kicked Bai Yan to the ground and a hogue entered the main camp ahead of everyone else. Seeing that everyone was present, Go Yuzhan held his head high. The shining silver breastplate on his chest was even more dazzling under the light of the camp. Yo, our Minister of the Right is back. Look at how energetic you are. You must have won a great battle. Yin Shang, who was on good terms with Go Yuzhan, teased him. This time, Go Yuzhan ignored him. No matter how much Yin Shang tried to hide it, it was a fact that he had won the battle. This was something to be proud of. Seeing that they were still sitting there, waiting for the god-powered cannons to open the barrier, they might not even have touched a hair of the celestial race. But he was different. He had lured the people of the outer realm god race out, and without wasting a single soldier, he had captured a commander and over 100,000 captives. The number of war preparations they had prepared was uncountable. That damn fatty! Let him be so cocky. When he reported the results of the battle and threw the general in front of them, he would definitely be shocked. Go Yuzhan knelt down on one knee. Your subordinate did not disappoint you and completed the mission given by the general. There were no casualties among the god-powered cannons and less than 30% of the elixirs were used. Not bad. Your subordinate. Go Yuzhan wanted to continue reporting, but he realized that it wouldn't be very effective if he reported everything. He forcefully swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Then, he puffed out his chest, making the silver breastplate on his chest even more conspicuous. When Yin Shang and the others saw this, they couldn't help but smile at each other. Go Yuzhan had always been this childish and liked to take credit. From the first moment he stepped into the tent, they had seen through his thoughts. Yo, this breastplate doesn't look ordinary. It doesn't look like a treasure from our era. Where did it come from? Yin Shang tactfully changed the topic. Go Yuzhan's eyes lit up when he heard this. Fatty, oh Fatty, you're the best. Since you helped me pass the message, I'll give you some good treasures later. Cough. Go Yuzhan cleared his throat and puffed out his chest. I snatched this from the enemy's commander. Yes, you're right. I even caught a commander this time. As soon as he finished speaking, Go Yuzhan had an expression that seemed to be waiting for them to praise him. When he looked at Yin Shang, his expression seemed to say, Damn Fatty, aren't you admiring me? After a long while, no one was surprised by what they had imagined. He, who was still waiting to be praised, subconsciously frowned. Did I not make myself clear? That's impossible. How can I not know? Commander. Do they not know what it means to be a commander? In a period drama, capturing an enemy commander was rewarded with 10,000 taels of gold and the title of Marquis. Even if Go Yuzhan wasn't an ordinary soldier, a general should be rewarded for capturing an enemy commander. Moreover, he wasn't capturing an ordinary commander, but a commander. Bai Yan had told them the truth along the way. There were only 30 commanders among the Protoss. Above them was a commander, Bai Ning. What was going on? Go Yuzhan frowned even more. He clapped his hands, and Bai Yan, who had already been stripped clean, was dragged in by 2 experts. Bai Yan's divine ocean had already been sealed. He'd asked Go Yuzhan to seal it so that he could keep his life. Otherwise, Go Yuzhan wasn't strong enough to seal the divine ocean of a overgod. This is the commander I caught, Bai Yan. Go Yuzhan said angrily as he kicked Bai Yan. Why aren't you kneeling when you see the imperial star? Bang! Without any hesitation, Bai Yen knelt down. Even the others in the camp couldn't help but raise their eyebrows at his straightforwardness. Commander-in-Chief Yi, fellow commanders. I'm Bai Yen. This really is a commander. Ahog, don't tell me you're trying to make yourself look good. Yin Shang said. Nonsense, why would I do something like that? Go Yuzhan shouted angrily, but he didn't know how to explain Bai Yan's situation. He was indeed a bit spineless. It wasn't just him. The soldiers under him were the same. They didn't waste any words. They surrendered without even threatening or enticing. Don't look at him like that. He really is a commander, Go Yuzhan explained. To prove that he was telling the truth, he even kicked Bai Yen hard. Do you have anything to prove that you're a commander? If not, I'll chop off your head. Yes. It's in your armor. Huh. Go Yuzhan patted his robes, then pulled out a metallic command medallion. Hey, I really do. Look. He really is a commander. Go Yuzhan was as happy as a child after obtaining proof. Bai Yen let out a long sigh. He'd nearly lost his head. Good, Yuzhan did well this time. You even captured a commander. If you want a reward, we'll talk about it when we get back. You must have been tired from rushing all the way back. Go back and rest. Then detain him. Yi Zichen waved his hand. Go Yuzhan's eyes widened in confusion. He's the commander. He knows a lot about the Outlands. Don't you need to ask? I won't ask anymore. Yi Zichen maintained his warm smile. At that moment, report. There was a long and hurried cry outside the tent, and then the tent door was pushed open. Reporting to the Imperial Star, the barrier is broken. What? In an instant, everyone in the tent stood up. The barrier's broken. The divine-powered cannon blasted it apart. Good. It was obvious that Yi Zichen was truly excited. His hands trembled. Take me there. As he spoke, everyone in the tent left. Go Yuzhan stood dumbly in place and watched them leave. What's going on? Are these people crazy? Chapter 1963. The God-powered cannon was still firing. No one really calculated how long the God-powered cannon had been firing for. The only thing they could tell was that the cannon barrel was terrifyingly red. To the Outer Realm Protoss, this was a day of despair. Cannon fire rained down on their boundary. The Protoss citizens were in a state of panic. Every minute and second passed in torment. After much difficulty, they were used to the roar of the cannons. Countless attacks had failed to stop Ji Yuan's bandits from attacking from the outside. They believed in the defensive power of the boundary. In their hearts, they praised God King Yale for his wise decision to set up the boundary in the Outer Realm. They sighed at God King Yale's power. With just the boundary, he could prevent Ji Yuan's bandits from attacking. They could only be blocked outside the boundary. But just now, the boundary has been broken. Someone shouted. Anyone who heard this shout could feel the despair in his heart. Broken? How was that possible? Everyone who heard this thought that he had gone mad. How could the God King's boundary be broken? Looking up, the blue-red boundary was still intact. The surrounding people started to look for the person who said that the boundary had been broken. They wanted him to pay the price for lying. Who would have thought, before they could look for him, more and more people started to repeat the same word. The boundary has been broken. The boundary has been broken. Could it be true? Looking up again, everyone prayed in their hearts that all of this was fake. Undamaged. It was indeed fake. Just as they were relieved, they saw a scene from the corner of their eyes that made them collapse in despair. Yes, the boundary above their heads was still intact. But it was really broken somewhere. The huge gap was like a black hole. The surrounding area was full of cracks from the bombardment. Under the never-ending cannon fire, it was still shattering. The gap was getting bigger and bigger. The hearts of the Outer Realm Protoss citizens sank. The aura of despair enveloped them. Under Yale's regime, they could survive and stay in the Outer Realm because someone in their family had joined the army. Their power was very weak. The most ordinary lower god was already considered an expert among them. If Ji Yuan attacked, they had been afraid of the artillery fire for half a year. There could only be one result if it hit them: die. No. I don't want to die. No one knew who shouted it out. Fear was contagious. They were already living under the shadow of fear, and now they were being manipulated like this. It was a mess. The entire Outerium god race was instantly thrown into chaos. General, I got it. Go down. In the extraterritorial god race's tent, Bai Ning's expression was solemn. Yale's order had yet to be issued, and the people in the tent had yet to make a decision on whether or not to go to the rescue. Little did they know, Ji Yuan made the decision for them. The barrier was broken. A heavy atmosphere enveloped the camp as well. Not long ago they were still discussing the rescue mission. How long had it been? Ji Yuan had already fought his way in. General, where are you from? Why don't you understand human language? Commander Bai Ning said that he already knows the news of the barrier being broken. What are you still standing here for? The camp commander said. It's not a barrier, what's that? It's a deity. As soon as the soldier's voice fell, Bai Ning suddenly stood up, and his expression changed dramatically. This is bad. He, who had been worrying about how to deal with Ji Yuan's attack, had made the lowest level of mistake. The people were panicking. Who was most worried about the barrier being broken? Naturally, it was the ordinary deities. They were not soldiers, and did not have the strength to ensure their own safety. Now that the barrier was broken, the panic in their hearts was definitely the greatest. How are the deities doing? Very bad. The soldier's face was full of anxiety. The deities know that the barrier is broken and have collapsed. They are shouting that they don't want to die. They are very agitated. I don't know who started it, but they said that they want to go to the Divine Palace to find Lord Yale. Then why aren't you sending people to suppress them? The commander shouted angrily. This subordinate has already sent people to suppress them, but the result is not very ideal. Moreover, they are all deities, and this subordinate does not dare to use force to suppress them. Moreover, the soldiers in our army are related to those deities. Now that they have caused such a ruckus, the morale of the army is also a little chaotic. It was not right to say that he was a soldier at this time. From his words, it could be seen that he was also a steward with some real power. His face was full of anxiety. It was obvious that he did not know how to deal with the panic of the people outside. Commander-in-Chief Bai, Commander-in-Chief, Generals, what should this subordinate do? Suppress them. Suppress them forcefully. Someone in the commander shouted angrily. The rioters are not the deities, but the mobs. What's the use of showing mercy to the mobs? Suppress them forcefully. Kill anyone who disagrees. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. The other mobs will naturally be obedient. Do you want to destroy the Protoss? Suddenly, Bai Ning narrowed his eyes and looked at the deputy general. The Iron Fist is useful in the army, but it does not mean that it will be useful to the people. Believe it or not, if you kill one person, even the people who are not rioting will become mobs. Moreover, didn't you hear what he said just now? The soldiers in the army are related to the people. If you kill them, what will happen to the soldiers? The deputy general who proposed to suppress them forcefully sat down. Even though Bai Ning had spoken, he still did not think that there was anything wrong with his decision. The Iron Fist was a way to solve the problem. Bai Ning actually did not deny it, but he would only use it as a last resort. At this time, the barrier had just been broken, and Ji Yuan had not directly attacked. The panic of the people had not reached its peak. This also meant that they still had time to solve the panic of the people. By stabilizing the people, the soldiers in the army would also be able to better face Ji Yuan's attack. Send people to ensure the safety of those deities. All? The supervisor who came to report the situation asked. Oh, Commander, you're crazy. Do you know how many deities there are in the Protoss? Even if 100 people are protected by one soldier, we would need more than 600,000 soldiers. The commander slammed the table and stood up. Ji Yuan is about to attack. We don't have the Yuan-breaking giant beast, and we have to waste 600,000 soldiers to ensure the safety of those deities. You're the commander and I'm the commander. Why don't you take my seat? In an instant, the commander did not dare to say another word. Bai Ning only snorted coldly. Do as I say. Send 1,000,000 soldiers to ensure the safety of the deities. 100, the commander wanted to say more, but when he saw the look in Bai Ning's eyes, he swallowed his words. Also, just as the officer who came to report was about to leave, Bai Ning spoke again. Release the angel race. Chapter 1964. Under Bai Ning's pressure. All the commanders could do was carry out his orders. This did not mean that they agreed with Bai Ning's actions. Not only that, some of them even thought that Bai Ning had lost his mind. He called Divine Emperor Yale by his name. He ignored Divine Emperor Yale's order and insisted on releasing the angels. After all, Yale was the one who personally sealed the angels. He used his divine power to create a barrier around the angels, reducing their range of activity to 1/10 of what it used to be. It was said that all this was because the Angel King had disobeyed him. As for why Yale did not vent his anger on the angels and kill them all, the gods did not know. The only thing they knew was that the angels had become a taboo. Under such circumstances, Bai Ning still wanted to release them. They could only hope that Divine Emperor Yale would not blame them after he found out. The commanders did not understand. Bai Ning did not care. He naturally had his reasons for doing so. The remaining commanders were not smart. They were all idiot. Their thinking was not on the same level, so it was understandable that they did not understand his actions. What Bai Ning needed was for them to be obedient. If they were like Bai Yin, self-righteous and arbitrary, Bai Ning would rather they were dead. In case they messed up his plan. As soon as Bai Ning announced the release of the angels, several commanders went to carry out the orders. Among them, the old fox was among them. Do we need so many people to release the angels? One is enough. The rest stay. Our main target is Ji Yuan. Don't you think so? After taking a few steps, the commanders stopped. They looked at each other. In the end, only one commander left. That old fox was left behind. Bai Ning was too cunning. The old fox thought. He was sure that Bai Ning had guessed his thoughts. The barrier was broken. The great era would soon invade, and a fierce battle would be unavoidable. Another 1,000,000 gods were sent to appease the people. They did not have enough manpower. Their chances of winning were less than 60%. They all knew that going to the angels was an easy job. He was old and did not want to fight with those youngsters, but Bai Ning did not allow it. Old fox, compared to these youngsters, I still believe in you. Although you were not very capable when you were young, you have experience and qualifications. I can rest assured if you are my assistant. What do you think? F***ck off. The old fox was so angry that his heart was about to twitch. Was this a compliment? In any case, he was also a veteran of the god race. Even Yale hadn't lived as long as him. The youngsters of the god race had to respectfully address him as senior when they saw him. By Ning, he was belittled to the point that he was worthless. And he was even the assistant. What did the assistant do? All the dirty and tiring work was done by the assistant. Some dangerous tasks were also handled by the deputies. He was supposed to be the commander-in-chief, so he could stay in the army peacefully. This time, Bai Ning directly sent him to the front line. Should he refuse? He didn't dare. He knew very well that Bai Ning was cruel and merciless. He had killed a main god right in front of the Darkness God King. That Lord God was a trusted follower of the Darkness God King. As for him, he was just a general who was better at fighting. He still did it in front of the God King. Just look at how daring this guy is. Now, he was the commander. He held all of the god race's military power. Without Yale, he was the heavens. If he didn't agree, Bai Ning would absolutely kill him. Bai Ning grinned at the wily old fox. "It's my honor to serve as Commander Bai's assistant," said the wily old fox, nodding and bowing. "Then I'll have to trouble you." As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Ning patted his cloak with his arm. "Summon the troops." The barrier broke. At long last, it had been broken. In truth, the crack wasn't particularly large, but it was undeniable that the barrier had been broken. The divine might cannon didn't stop. The cannons accurately hit the edges of the crack, causing it to crack wider and wider. Yi. Emperor Hades walked over to Yi Zichen's side and noticed that Yi Zichen's hands, which had always been as steady as a mountain, were now trembling. He'd been repressed for far too long. Yi Zichen had truly been repressed for far too long. The people around him had been captured by Yale. His family, his best friend, his emperor, and even his female confidant. He was anxious. More anxious than anyone else. However, with so many eyes on him, he had to maintain his composure. Until just now. It broke. The barrier blocking Yi Zichen and the Era Yuan army's advance shattered. Everything he'd repressed in his heart instantly stirred. Yin Shang and Go Yuzhan followed. Only now did Go Yuzhan notice that there were many unfamiliar faces in the Era Yuan army. Their equipment. It was the outsiders. "Have you fought with the Outer Realm God race? What do you think?" Yin Shang laughed. "It was quite a battle, but I don't think you captured as many as you did. Most of them were killed by our people." Then the commander-in-chief. "Look over there." Yin Shang pointed to the logistics department. Go Yuzhan had just captured a commander-in-chief, and I was escorted over there. The commander-in-chief and deputy generals are over there. In truth, we didn't capture many. We only captured 20 or so commander-in-chief and around 70 deputy generals. No wonder he hadn't asked. He'd captured so many commander-in-chiefs, so he'd probably asked everyone he could. He thought back to how he'd captured a commander-in-chief and tried to claim credit. That was too embarrassing. "You damned fatty! You tricked me." "Who tricked you?" "You were the one who acted like you were number one." "I was just playing along." Yin Shang shrugged. F***ck. Go Yuzhan cursed. It was really embarrassing. Fortunately, Lori hadn't been there. Otherwise, Go Yuzhan really wouldn't know where to hide his face. The ahog on Go Yuzhan's head shook a few times, then he looked away and looked at Yi Zichen. "Boss, you're in quite a mood swings." "How could it not?" sighed Yin Shang. The people captured by the Outer Realm God race were all people who were inextricably linked to the Emperor's star. The Lord of 7 Stars, Yi Rong, was his mother. The Goddess of Life, Su Yan, and the Upheaval Alliance's deputy alliance head, Xiao Yumei, were his lovers. The Jade Lake Palace head, the Fox Empress. They were all higher-ups of the Upheaval Alliance. None of them were as anxious as he was. It was just that he'd always kept it to himself. Now that the barrier had finally shattered, the Era Yuan army could finally slaughter their way into the outsiders' territory. Yi Zichen wasn't excited. Who else could be? The surrounding Era Yuan experts had already begun gathering around the crack. Once the divine-powered cannon opened it a bit wider, they'd advance. Emperor Hades, Su Yun, suddenly raised his arms and called out. He'd naturally given this order because he'd received Yi Zichen's approval. Just as he finished his sentence. Chapter 1965. Through the gap. The era's powerhouses passed through it in an orderly manner. The first battle was a victory. Their morale was high, needless to say. But this would not make them arrogant to the point of losing their minds. In the end, the Outer Realm's celestial race was just the vanguard. Who knew how many soldiers were waiting for them inside the celestial race? They had not truly won. Since the Era Lord had not killed the Outer Realm God Emperor, the Era could not relax. The first to enter the Outer Realm's celestial race through the broken boundary, it was Demon Emperor Qin. Behind him were many demon elite. Thick purple demonic energy instantly turned the outer realm's celestial races void purplish black. The demon elites were all brimming with energy, eager to fight. Anxious. These were the personal guards of the demon Emperor Quinn. Looking at their expressions, he knew what these fellows were thinking. Speaking of war, the demon race had never stopped fighting in recent years. His trusted subordinates had always been on the edge of life and death. They were already used to this kind of war. They did not even need to warm up from the moment they left the era, they had already made ample preparations. And the demon race was warlike. They were afraid that there would be no war to fight. Now that they could fight the outer realm's celestial race, these elites were extremely excited. Among the gods, demons, and demons, who looked forward to this war the most, the demon race was number one. Don't go overboard. Don't attack the ordinary people if you can. If you want to kill the gods. Yes, the mighty demon race army pressed down on the outer realm. In the eyes of the ordinary people below, they were like a thick layer of purplish-black clouds. Covering the sky, it was abnormally terrifying. They're in. The outer realm's celestial race had finally calmed down a little, but when the era's powerhouses passed through the broken boundary, they instantly panicked. Don't move, General Bai Ning sent us to ensure your safety. With us here, you will not be in any danger. This place is absolutely safe, they cannot fight their way in. Commander-in-Chief Bai Ning and the other Commander-in-Chief are already fighting the enemy. I believe that you will be safe and sound. The people began to panic, trying to escape to a safe place. At this time, one had to say that Bai Ning was very experienced. 1,000,000 deities. It was just enough to stabilize these commoners. Even if there were only a few tens of thousands of them, they might not have enough troop. The deities tried to calm the emotions of the people. Inside the tent, Commander. The Commander-in-Chief and the Deputy Generals were all ready for battle. Countless true gods gripped their weapons tightly as they stared at the crack above their heads. He could only watch helplessly as the people outside came in. It's finally here. A sigh flashed across Bai Ning's old face. If it wasn't for Bai Yen and the other generals being stupid, the barrier had never been opened. Yale's barrier could at least last for a few more days. With this extra time, he could carry out a more thorough plan. Unfortunately, there were too many idiots. They took the initiative to activate the impregnable barrier, causing his sister to lose her stability. They wanted to fight Ji Yuan with just tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of troops. In the end, he became a captive of the enemy. The war preparations were seized by Ji Yuan. The Yuan-breaking beast was also wasted by these idiots. This made the Outerium god race's situation even worse. They had no choice but to place the main battlefield within the Outerium god race. Southern God Clan. This was the main battlefield of this war. There was no reason to choose it as the main battlefield. It was purely because it was the closest to the crack. Bai Ning was the commander. He had the responsibility to keep the enemy out. Southern God Clan was the last region he could tolerate. How is the retreat of the true gods? Bai Ning asked the logistics officer next to him. All the true gods have evacuated, but some of their personal belongings were too late to be evacuated. It's good that they have evacuated. The war is imminent. Who has the time to care about their belongings? It's good enough that they are still alive, one of the commanders said. The ordinary true gods are fine, but some of the merchants. The logistics officer wanted to say something but stopped. He thought back to those fat merchants who had arrogantly criticized the soldiers in charge of logistics. Those despicable and arrogant faces, and the scene of their spittle flying. The resentment in his heart grew. They demanded that our people take out their belongings. They said that their resources are very important, and if we don't give them, they will cause a ruckus. Shut them up. Bai Ning narrowed his eyes and said, Is any of these guys' money clean? Not long ago, it seemed that some of them were making money from the war and cheating the families of those old people who joined the army. This kind of person is immoral. If they dare to say another word, their fat heads will be chopped off. If anyone still dares to speak, behead them again. Yes. The logistics officer left in satisfaction. At the start, he also wanted to know how to treat those merchants. Regardless of whether they were from the Outerium god race or the New Era, maggots were actually the majority. In order to expand their pockets, they were unscrupulous. The national crisis was imminent. The Outerium god race had previously called for donations. Some merchants donated pitifully little, even less than those ordinary true gods. At this moment, they were thinking about their own wealth? Especially when they mentioned how rich they were, the logistics officer really wanted to chop off their heads with the corners of their mouth. However, they couldn't do that. Now that General Bai Ning had clearly given the order, the logistics officer had nothing to be afraid of. When he returned, he would tell Bai Ning about it. If those merchants were stupid enough to ask for their belongings, of course he could tolerate them feeling sad. But if they asked him to take it, then he could only say sorry to them. And also to say sorry to his life. These god race maggots should have been chopped up and fed to the dogs long ago, one of the deputy generals snorted angrily. Before they became famous, some of them had experienced being cheated by merchants. Even though they were important people now, they couldn't help but feel indignant when they thought of their experiences when they were young. Don't worry about them. Bai Ning waved his hand lightly, indicating for everyone to not pay too much attention to those maggots. To them, these maggots were just an interlude. The epic devils were already in front of them. Many true gods held their weapons in their hands, waiting for their commander's words. They would charge forward without fear. Whether it was for the Outerium god race, for their families, or for themselves, they had to fight to the death. Coincidentally, the epic almighties had the same determination. Chapter 1966. There was no hesitation. He did not flinch. For the future, for the possibility of survival. Be it the Outerium god race or the soldiers of the New Era, they were all determined to win. He resolutely stepped onto the smoke-filled battlefield. Everyone had their own beliefs in their hearts. The fight had reached this stage. Not much time had passed since Ji Yuan took the initiative to attack and broke through the barrier. The confrontation between the god race and the epic, it hadn't even been a week. To the Outer Realm god race, this was a very short time, but they had no choice but to acknowledge Ira's power. Compared to any plane they had encountered before, he had to make them feel pressured. Their god-powered cannons and their overall strength. The Outer Realm god race had underestimated them. The current era was no longer a lower plane that struggled to survive under the shadow of the Outer Realm divine race. They had enough qualifications to shake the position of the god race's overlord. Only, the Outer Realm god race could not figure it out no matter how hard they tried. Why was Ji Yuan able to improve by leaps and bounds in just half a year? It wasn't that the Outer Realm god race hadn't investigated Ji Yuan. They had investigated it, and they had investigated it many times. At that time, the conclusion they came to was that Ji Yuan was nothing to be afraid of. Their emperor stars were similar to god kings. Since the time it took for it to grow was relatively short, there was still a certain gap between them and a god king. In terms of experts, there were less than 50 imperial emperors and less than 10,000 emperors. Right now, there were imperial lords and emperors everywhere. Such a large number of experts increased the pressure on the Outerium god race. Warriors of the devil race, for the glory of the devil race, kill the enemy. The devil race, which was the first to arrive at the god race's territory, was the first to clash with the god race. Before the demons came in, Bai Ning had already ordered the 3 commanders to lead 1,000,000 soldiers and wait in the void. The Fiend race and the Outer Realm God race army were on the verge of launching an attack. Blood rained down. 1,000,000 brave warriors. Whether it was listening or watching, it was enough to shock people. The gods and the Era demons were fighting in the sky, and people kept falling from the sky. There were demons. There were also Outer Realm God clans. There was bound to be an absolute advantage in a home-ground battle. Any god that fell from the void would be taken away by the god race to be treated if they didn't die. The devil race was not that lucky. They were facing a merciless blade. Regarding this situation, the demon emperor felt that there was nothing wrong with it. Their era belonged to the charge group, so casualties were unavoidable. In ancient times, the success of sieging a city was also exchanged with flesh and blood. In this situation, the warlike nature of the devil race had indeed become the best target to charge at. No matter how he died, they would not retreat even half a step. It was forward. Keep moving forward. Even if the people around them died, even if they were stabbed, they would still have the determination to exchange their lives for the lives of others before they died. Just like a suicide squad, they were not afraid of death. If they died, then so be it, as long as their deaths were worthwhile. That was enough. Charge. He had already forgotten how many times the demons had charged. Every time they charged, they would kill at least tens of thousands of demon elite. At this time, he vaguely remembered that when the devil race came, there were millions of people. Now, 1,000,000 men of sacrifice. It was probably less than 100,000. More than half of the million true gods died under the charge of the demon race. Such a large number of casualties. One had to know that the outer realm god race was on the defensive side. They had the advantage of being on their home ground. But there were still so many casualties. This was not what made the outer realm god race despair the most. What made them despair was that the demon race's men of sacrifice were still being replenished. They maintained their numbers above 100,000. As long as it was less than this, the devil race would immediately replenish it. Commander! I see it. Bai Ning squinted at this scene in the void. It was too shocking. This kind of unafraid of death, completely disregarding life and death, was to disperse the outer realm god race's formation. Bai Ning had led troops to war for so many years. He had never seen any general commanding troops to such an extent. If they met, his undefeated record would have been broken long ago. As long as it was a living creature, they would have fear. Bai Ning had always used this fear to exert pressure and magnify it. At that time, the strength of the enemy would naturally fall by several times. If their morale was high, it would be obvious who would win and who would lose. They were not afraid of death. How could they not be afraid of death? Which epic race are they? Bai Ning asked. Devil race. Devil race? Didn't they say that the epic devils have always had a tense relationship with the celestial race and Yao race? How could they come together and fight such a heavy battle? Bai Ning was shocked. He did not expect the devil race to appear here, and in such a manner. This, the subordinate did not know how to answer. He could only stand at the side with his head bowed. Has the angel race been released? Not yet. The subordinate said with a bitter expression. After Commander Qing went over, the guards there said that they would only release the angel race after receiving Lord Yale's warrant. If not, no matter who comes, they will not release them. At this time, General Qing is still arguing with them. Damn it, damn. Bai Ning cursed, which was rare for him. He stared straight ahead, the blue veins on his arms instantly tensed. Tell the people over there that the angel race must be released. Tell them that this is Bai Ning's idea. If they don't listen, tell Qingyu to kill those two idiots. The key is on them. Just open the seal. Commander, if you do this, do you have any questions? Bai Ning glared. The Protoss all knew Bai Ning's nature. At this time, no one dared to provoke him. The subordinate hurriedly shook his head and went to contact Commander Qingyu. He muttered inwardly, hoping that the two guards guarding the angel race would have some brains. If they did not deal with General Bai's order now, they might really have to bid farewell to this world for the last time. The commander and deputy generals at the side were all puzzled. Even now, they did not understand why Bai Ning was so insistent on releasing the angel race. Did this have any direct connection with this battle? They could not figure it out, so they did not dare to ask further. At the same time, Bai Ning looked at the defensive line that was about to break through and said to the commander next to him, "Let the first defensive line come down. The second defensive line." Then, Bai Ning pointed to the void. That was where the outer realm Protoss were clashing with the devil race. "Do you see that? That's the furthest position I can tolerate. If our people take half a step back, or before the angel race is released, if you let even half of Ji Yuan's people slip in." Bai Ning paused for a moment, a smile flashing across his lips. Chapter 1967. The Angel Clan. The angels who could once fly freely in the Protoss clan. At this time, it was as if their wings had been broken. They could no longer spread their wings. The entire angel clan was trapped in a narrow space. Person by person, there was very little space for them to move around. What trapped them was a layer of enchantment. Outside the enchantment, there were only 200 higher god experts and 2 Lord God level steward. To the angels, as long as they could open the enchantment, this defensive power could not stop them from leaving. Unfortunately, this was Yale's plan. No matter what the angels did, they could not shake the enchantment at all. In fact, this was inevitable. The enchantment that trapped the angels was the same as the outer enchantment of the Protoss clan. With the god-powered cannon, it took them a day and a night to break it, and this was based on the fact that the main commander had opened the enchantment, causing it to be unstable. If not for them, it was unknown how long it would take to break in. There was nothing they could do. The angels could only curl up in this narrow space, looking up at the sky where they could once soar freely. A habit that they had once taken for granted. Now it had become an extravagant hope. They knew very well why they were trapped. Yale usurped the throne. The Angel King fought with Yale to take revenge for kicking the old God Emperor. Therefore, Yale turned the angels into a rebel army. Perhaps Yale was being merciful by not killing off their entire clan and only trapping them. Of course, there was a reason for not killing them. During this period, Yale's people had been contacting the angels. The people who were contacted had a tacit understanding. They knew very well that the most likely reason to see them now was to have a heart-to-heart talk with them and ask them to submit to Yale. No matter what, the angel race used the power of holiness. This special power could only be used by the angels in the entire Milky Way galaxy. The angel clan had the right to continue living. Number 1745. In order to unify the management, the Protoss had numbered the angels. The angels whose number was called squeezed out of the crowd. Under everyone's gaze, his eyes flashed with a confident smile. Want to enlist? No way. The angels had always been loyal to the Angel King, and Yale was the Angel King's murderer. Working for him, he might as well die. The people whose numbers had been called told their experiences after they came back. There was no exception. They all rejected him with righteous words. Therefore, the angel tribe was also given the title of stubborn and inflexible by the guards outside. What is Yale trying to do? The 2 8-winged angels narrowed their eyes. They were now the leaders of the angel tribe. Under the request of the Angel King, they returned to their tribe and prepared to lead their people to the new era. Little did they know, Yale came faster than they had expected. The angels weren't as obedient as they thought. After learning that Yale had usurped the throne, the Angel King and the God Emperor had both fallen. The first thing the Angel Clan wanted to do was to take revenge. They had wasted too much time trying to appease them. When they were about to leave, Yale is here. He even sealed them inside the barrier. From then on, the Angel Clan began to live in captivity. The Venerable of Lingbao was among them. Moreover, the angel race needed him to lead the way to the new era. The Angel Clan was trapped, so naturally, he was trapped as well. "Sir Lingbao, you're quite carefree," said the 8-winged woman. The Venerable of Lingbao, who was lying on the ground and looking at the sky, shrugged and smiled. "I'm used to it." Speaking of being detained, he was already used to it. He'd been locked up in Shui Yang's dungeon for tens of thousands of years. He'd never seen the sun. He'd endured all of that. Now, these things were nothing to him. The old woman was startled. What did he mean by used to it? At that moment, go in. None of you angels know what's good for you. 1745, who'd been called out, was pushed back in. The gods outside cursed and cursed, clearly in a bad mood. The angel clan member smiled at 1745. He didn't submit. As expected of the angel clan. Well done. The eight-winged old man patted him on the shoulder. The angel scratched his head shyly. That guy wanted me to submit to Yale. He said that if I did, the future angel king would be me. I know my own limits. Given my talent, the angel king can only appear in dreams. I refused without even thinking about it. Very good. The old man smiled in satisfaction. Then what's their goal? The old woman furrowed her brows. They've searched for our clansmen over and over again, and all of them have clearly refused. But they're still so persistent. Even if some of them do join them, what can a few angels do for them? I don't know, said the old man. Little did they know. As they spoke, the Venerable of Lingbao discreetly observed the returning angels. He didn't do it on purpose. In fact, he'd sneak a few glances at each returning angel. As for why, he didn't believe there were no cowards. None of the angels who'd been called out had joined Yale. The Venerable of Lingbao didn't think that was possible. He didn't believe any clan could be so righteous. Perhaps the Venerable of Lingbao was just being petty. But he didn't think there was anything wrong with him. He was still firm in his belief that among these people, there must be people who had sided with Yale. But they hadn't stayed with Yale. Instead, they'd returned to the angels. Spies. Spies. The Venerable of Lingbao hoped that he was being petty. Otherwise, if there were spies planted in the angels, the problems that would arise would be really hard to deal with. The Venerable of Lingbao was still staring at 1745. As if sensing the Venerable of Lingbao's gaze, 1745 smiled shyly at him, then slapped his head. Oh right, I heard some news when I went out. What news? The news of the angels being trapped had been blocked. News from the outside world was very important to them. It seems that Ji Yuan's battle with the Protoss has reached the Southern God clan. So fast. It was indeed too fast. They'd only been trapped for a few months. Even though they knew that there would definitely be a battle between Ji Yuan and the extraterrestrial Protoss. But they'd started fighting so quickly, and they'd even fought their way in. The angels found it hard to believe. Not only that, the shy angel scratched his head. If I didn't hear wrong, it seems like Bai Ning is going to let us go. Whoosh, the Venerable of Lingbao, who was lying on the ground, suddenly got up. It wasn't the excitement of being released. But there was a problem. A very big problem. This time, the Venerable of Lingbao was sure that the angels had spies from the extraterrestrial Protoss. Between them,